For February 8th, 2023. The time is 9:31. Let's begin this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Seated. Okay, and I just wanted to announce this morning that Commissioner Ruane is representing us in Tallahassee at a committee hearing, so he will not be joining us today, but the other four of us are present and ready for this hearing. Our first case is a zoning case. It's the Matlacha Pine Island Fire Station number 2 case. I'd like to recognize our administration to introduce the first case.
Good morning, Chair. Staff will be presenting these items this morning. First one up, Matlacha Pine Island Fire Station.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sharon Badamchian from Lee County Zoning. But Matlacha Fire Station is an existing fire station, and which is on Stringfellow Road. They purchased additional land from the neighbors to expand the fire station. So they are requesting to rezone the existing fire station and the property that they have purchased to CFPD to allow for the expansion of the fire station and addition of a helipad for emergencies. There was one participant of record, and hearing examiner heard this case and recommended approval.
Thank you. Do we have, commissioners, any questions for our staff on this item? Okay, I see none. Thank you. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation? Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to put my information on the record. I'm Veronica Martin with TDM Consulting, representing the applicants, the Matlacha Pine Island Fire Station District. We are in agreement with the hearing examiner's recommendation of approval. I do have a brief presentation, or I can just answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Okay, commissioners, does anyone wish to see the presentation, or do you have questions?
Good. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thanks very much. At this time, I'll call the participant of record, Stacy Stevens. Stacy Stevens, are you here? If so, please come forward. Okay, I don't see Stacy Stevens here. At this time, we'll come back to the board. Does somebody wish to make a motion or?
I move the item.
Okay, motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass. Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Any further discussion on this item? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right, our next case is the mini warehouse facility. Please introduce the item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sharon Badamchian from Lee County Zoning. This is an existing approved plan development which allows mini warehouses. They are trying to amend, they're requesting to amend the existing approved plan development to increase the height of the building and the square footage. And staff reviewed and recommended approval. Hearing examiner recommended approval of the case. There was one participant of record for this case.
Okay, very good. Do we have any questions for our staff on this case, commissioners?
Not yet.
Okay, seeing none, thank you. At this time, would the applicant wish to make a presentation? Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Aiken of Henderson Franklin here this morning on behalf of the applicant. I also have here with me Linda Miller and Brendan Sloan with Avalon, who are the project planner and the project engineer. We have a presentation if you'd like to see it. Otherwise, I'll just say that we are in agreement with the hearing examiner's recommendation and would request approval.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions, or would you like to see the presentation on this one?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'll call the two participants of record. We have Casey Armenteros. Casey Armenteros. Okay. How about Candace? Okay, I don't see either of the participants of record, so we'll move back to the board. Does somebody wish to make a motion or just?
Item.
Okay, motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass, second from Commissioner Greenwell. Any further discussion on that item? Are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, please introduce the third item.
Commissioners, good morning. Dirk Danley, Lee County Zoning. This is the third case before you, DCI 2021-40. This request is to rezone approximately 7.4 acres from RS1 and CPD to CPD. The applicant is seeking two different development plans, the first of which has RV and boat sales to the west with service on the east. The second is a convenience food and beverage store to the west with fuel pumps and a public warehouse to the east. The hearing examiner recommended approval with conditions. There was, I believe, 4 participants of record, and staff and the applicant are here with any questions that you may have.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions at this time? Okay, thank you very much. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Recommendation was very detailed, very thorough, with conditions and the reasons for those conditions. I can answer any questions you may have, or I can do the presentation.
Very good. Do you wish to see the presentation on this one, commissioners, or have any questions?
I already read the file, I'm good.
Okay, very good. Thanks,
All right,
Ms.
thank
Martin.
you.
All right, at this time, I will call the participants of record. Gina Boyven. Gina Boyven, okay. Scott Bostrom. Scott Bostrom, okay. Donald Fuss, Donald Fuoss. All right, I don't see Donald. And William Mooney. Good morning. When you get to the podium, no need to touch the microphone. It's all set for you. The lights on the top of the podium there work just like a traffic light. There's a green, yellow, and red light. It'll let you know when you're coming to the end of your time. And you may begin whenever you're ready.
Okay. First off, they're zoning this part of what they're requesting to zone is between 2 residential homes. And one of them is my residential home. The other one's an elderly lady that lives next to me. And I have a garage that was put on the backside of my house, a detached garage. There's an easement between the land they're trying to rezone and my property, and the only access I have to my garage is through this land that they're trying to rezone. If they rezone it, and they were speculating a berm possibly put all the way around it, I spoke to Ms. Martin during the last meeting, and she said that they would try to make accommodations for the berm not to be there, so I would still have access. I have a large motorhome and stuff back there. I have to be able to get back there to it. And the green space was adequate for me. I'm not really opposed to standing in the way of progress, but I do have another concern that these are several different lots. If they rezone these lots and then decide to break it up later, does it require different green space? Part of this lot is on one side of Judd Road. The other part is on I would guess it would be the east side of Judd Road. If they was decide to sell it later, would that shorten the green space? The green space is adequate now for what they're requesting. But if they decide to sell partial.
And I did tell him easement through the property, the applicant's property adjacent to his property, providing access to the rear of his property for him to pull his RV to the back of his property, that we would indeed, at the time of development order permitting and design, include that access and easement on the property. Right now, the CPD application is for the 2 scenarios that Brandon discussed. If there are any changes to the proposed uses or the master concept plan, it would have to go back through the amendment process, which more than likely would go back through the public hearing process. The conditions of the zoning resolution include indigenous and open space. So those cannot be decreased unless you go back through the public hearing. So he will always have, I believe it's 34% on option 2 and 34.2% on option 1.
Very good. Commissioners, any further questions? Commissioner Greenwell?
Chairman, if I may ask a question. So through at the development order, when that goes through and you come back before us, then we would be able to see that you're providing the neighbor with access
Yes,
to
sir.
his property. So to explain that a little bit better for you, it goes through another process. When it comes back to that process, you'd be more than welcome to come back and explain to us that you were promised access, and if you're being denied access, we would want to know that. So at this point, they're saying they'll provide it, so they should provide it at the next level when they do the development order.
As long as there's legal access,
Fair
correct.
enough. Okay, thank you.
Commissioners Pendergrass and then Sandelli.
I have a question for the county attorney. Would a motion should have indicating some type of language requiring some type of right-of-way easement for the existing garage to get to it? Because during the development stage, we wouldn't be involved with that decision-making unless it came back for us, right? Could that
You're correct, it will not come back to you, but the code,
we include that in a motion to?
you don't need it. The land development code requires the title work, which will be done on the site. And if it indicates that there is actual legal access and easement on the property, then they're required to address it during the development order stage. They would not be able to provide, place structures or development within the easement that is not consistent with that easement.
Even including vegetation, a buffer, or anything that would block?
Correct.
Okay.
You wouldn't be able to.
So making sure, trying to save them time and money and the resident next door too.
Right.
Access.
The code will address the individual's concern, and if there is development that's proposed in this current plan that is inconsistent with that easement, then they will have to amend the plan to accommodate that easement.
I think in good faith, we're trying to make sure it's done right. Like Commissioner Greenwell said, we're just making sure to try to save them time. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Sandelli.
It seems we're in agreement. I just, which is good. I just want to make sure that Mr. Mooney understands that process and he's comfortable with that process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Are there any further questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, very good. All right, at this time, does somebody wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, motion for approval from Commissioner Greenwell, and the second is from Commissioner Sandelli. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, please introduce the Bayshore Ranch case.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Beth Workman. I'm with the Zone. This request is to rezone rezone 1.109.67 acres from agricultural to residential plan development to allow 130 dwelling units with amenities. Listed out. Single-family residential uses. There were 5 participants.
Okay, thank you very much.
As you wish, Neil. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Neil Montgomery. We do have a presentation. We don't necessarily want to give it. The reason I wanted to keep this aerial because right now we can do 1 unit an acre. We're going to 1.2 and savings and restoring 60% of the site. And you can see there's an RV park and single family much more dense than this proposed project to the south. So if you have questions after the public, we're here to answer.
Very good. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Montgomery at this point? No? Okay, very good, thank you. At this time, I'll call the participants of record for this case. We have 5. Gregory Bortsfield. Gregory Bortsfield, are you here? Okay, I do not see Gregory. Richard Burnett. Richard Burnett? Okay. And Richard Burnett would be followed by Justin Cook. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for the chance to share. Back in December, I tried to convey to the county hearing examiner's office that our Bayshore community is in trauma following the hurricane. I reported that of 84 residences located in the 3 streets across from the Bayshore Ranch, 42% had suffered flood damage. At that meeting, I also shared my observation about the flood patterns. Obviously, closer to the Caloosahatchee, the damage was due to the storm surge. However, on Laurel End Street, where I live, even with the community's protected wetland area next to the river, flooded properties extended further north compared to the 2 adjacent streets. This is due to Bayshore Drive. If Bayshore Ranch is filled with 130 residences and pavement, how can the property's current function as a buffer against water displacement be sustained? Water moves in 3 primary ways. One is surface flow, the second is infiltration into the soil surface, and the third is percolation into the soil profile. Obviously, wetlands, woods, and grassy areas such as currently exist at Bayshore Ranch are serving to slow down surface flow, thereby enabling more water to infiltrate and percolate into the aquifer. Unfortunately, squeezing in 130 residences and paving a big chunk will only serve to increase overall surface flow. And where will that excess water go due to heavy rainfall? On the east side of the property, it will flow into Palm Creek with increased risk of flooding the Colusa Woods community. By the way, during both Hurricanes Irma and Ian, evacuation orders were given for both sides of Bayshore, including the Bayshore Ranch property. Consequently, this raises a few questions. Why would the county be willing to increase the number of properties at risk during major hurricanes by expanding development where recent flood evacuations have been ordered? Why shouldn't Bayshore Ranch be preserved in a more natural state to help mitigate the threat of flooding? Why not honor Frank Mann, the great defender of rural Lee County, by adding Bayshore Ranch to the county's 2020 conservation lands and name it in his honor? Or instead, why don't we just keep cramming houses into every square inch of Lee County? Look out, Pine Island, I'm sure you're next. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Justin Cook is our next speaker. Justin, are you here? All right, I don't see Justin. How about Lucas Gabes? All right, and after Lucas will be Debbie Jackow. Morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is Lucas Gabes. My family and I bought land on Bayshore Road, right down the street from the subject property. We bought it with a dream to be able to grow our own food, live more of a self-sustainable lifestyle. You know, whatever we're not growing, we could trade with the neighbors and have a community where we're, you know, self-sufficient. You know, I'm not having to rely on the grocery stores and things like that. And, you know, I came from the East Coast of Florida, South Florida, Broward, where this dream is not possible. There's no farmland. There's a little bit in Homestead, but Homestead is becoming this. And there's hardly any left. So we came here, and it had to be in South Florida because South Florida is very special where we're able to grow certain foods and fruit trees that you can't grow anywhere else in the United States. So it had to be in South Florida, and this is what's left of South Florida agricultural land, really. So, you know, it really breaks my heart to see it losing more agricultural land, because it's far more valuable to us as agricultural land than this neighborhood. And it's also filled with wetlands. There's tons of gopher tortoises. It's a really beautiful place, and it should be treated as such. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much for your time this morning. And Debbie Jackow. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Jacko, and I represent the concerned citizens of Bayshore, Inc. The first thing I'd like to address is the traffic. The roads need to be sufficient before any building occurs. They use the traffic numbers from the 2019 District 1 FDOT report and the Lee County Level of Service report from 2020. This was during COVID, when many people couldn't go to work and businesses were shut. Babcock has added a lot of traffic to Bayshore Road since then. They need to do another traffic study that is accurate, from 6 to 9 a.m., 5 to 9 a.m., and maybe 4 to 8 p.m. at least. It is I would like to address is the lakes. In their application, when their lakes dry up from them using the water for irrigation, they want to resupply them using groundwater withdrawals from the sandstone aquifer during times of low rainfall. This aquifer is where we all get our drinking water because we are all on wells. Staff is concerned that the resupplying of these lakes will have adverse effects on the surrounding rural residents' domestic water supply. This is the difference between being truly rural and being a development in a rural area. We don't use sod that needs to be watered and maintained or fertilizer to keep it green. This pollutes the river even more. I'd like to address rare and unique upland habitats, which is defined as high-quality native upland habitat, categorized as mature. Since most of Bayshore is rare and unique, since we don't bulldoze down our trees, and why we fight so by Conservation 2020, there's 51 gopher tortoise burrows on less than 110 acres, 51 burrows. This is amazing to me. Gopher tortoises are a keystone species that share their burrows with over 350 other animals and creatures. Without these tortoises, many other species would not survive. They have a 40 to 60 year lifespan. Only 10% of the hatchlings make it to the first year of life, and they don't breed until they're 10 years old. 21 burrows are in the preserve area, and they need to stay, and that is documented on their map, which is page 2. There's another 7 burrows in the front right corner of the property, and they should be incorporated into this development. The one thing you need to understand is that rural is not just a category of zoning, but this is our way of life. This is where people can do 4-H. This is where people do the rodeo.
Your time is up, Ms. Jackow. I appreciate your comments this morning. In order to be fair to all speakers, we're going to be strict on the time limit today. So thank you.
I'm the last one.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
So they should be preserved.
Ms. Jackow, please take your seat. Thank you. Participants of record.
Yes, let me address Richard's comments regarding the drainage. At this point in time, an environmental resource permit has been issued for the property. In Chapter 10, the county does defer in large part to the Water Management District. It has been evaluated by the district, and the permit has been issued. And pre- and post-development runoff have to remain the same, so there will be no adverse impact to upstream or downstream people based on the issuance of the ERP. Lucas is concerned about the fact that there's certain vegetation that can grow in this zone that can't grow other places, and I appreciate his pursuit of sustainable farming. The owner of this property doesn't wish to pursue his type of farming, and they don't have to under your regulations. Ms. Jackow raised a concern about traffic on page 6 of the hearing examiner's report. The level of service C on the roads. Steve Long is here if you need additional information on the traffic, but traffic pursuant to both the staff and the applicant's analysis is not an issue. And the beauty of this...
No, order, please, in the courtroom. Thank you.
The beauty of this development is, if it's not rezoned, it can be cut up into 1-acre lots, and there is no preservation or anything that's saved. What's happening here is, for an additional 0.2 units an acre, they're setting aside 60% of the site and restoring the habitat and improving the drainage through Palm Creek. And David Brown was an expert witness who provided modeling and information to the county, which was evaluated by the staff, which ensured that water quality would be maintained and protected in this location. Do you need anything else? Did I answer all the questions, hopefully?
Yeah, what questions do you have, commissioners, for the applicant, if any?
I had questions for the county attorney.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Montgomery. Yep, go ahead. Commissioner.
County attorney, if you could, and everybody in the audience, some of you might have never been here before, but I think 2011, 2012, the state preempted the county and any municipality when it comes to zoning. I know the word traffic's going to come up a lot today, and we all have to deal with it. It took me 52 minutes to get to work today, so I get it, and I think we all understand that. But county attorney, can you explain to not just this case here related to traffic, that we cannot deny a case based upon traffic? We can do improvements later on with the county based upon the infrastructure, but we cannot deny a zoning case based upon traffic alone. And I'm trying to help everybody here so they understand that what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do here, because it's obviously a concern, and it wouldn't make, I know it doesn't make sense from the outside looking in that you can approve something and when traffic could be an issue. So can you give us the background on the statutory changes back in 2011, 2012 that the state preempted us on?
Yes, sir. You are 100% correct. Prior to 2011, the Board of County Commissioners and other local jurisdictions had the authority to review applications and determine if a project impacts roadway networks, and it was a term called concurrency. And simply that means that a project must have the infrastructure needed in order to get approvals. In 2011, the state adopted regulations that provide that the county no longer can use transportation deficiencies as a basis for denial of its development orders, development permits. So what you end up with is the county in 2010, 2011 could deny a request for rezoning based on impacts to transportation. Now you cannot on that issue alone. If there's other issues, maybe, but.
So basically what happens is, in this case and other cases around us, as the improvements occur, we have to try to catch up, as we're constantly trying to do now. And thank you, County Attorney. And we've already got the comments from one of the speakers about 2020. That's a great program we have in Lee County. We require over 40,000 acres of 2020 space, but that's the willing seller. So if this property owner decided, wish they would have 2 years ago, sold the property at 2020, we would have this discussion today. But the property owner is the one that chose to sell this property to be developed. So we're not at fault here, Neil, the developer, the people who choose to move there. Is the person that sold the property that chose not to use it for green space. So we have, if you know other people in the neighborhood that wants to sell their property in 2020, we have a great program. Come to us, but we cannot take the property under the county government currently exists and take your property for 2020 though. Thank you.
What other questions, comments, commissioners, does anybody have?
I'd like to have a comment on it as well.
Commissioner Greenwell?
I think I'd like to explain it to maybe a little simpler, that as a commissioner, our board here, we are bound by rules and laws that we don't have a choice. So under some circumstances, we can say no, but if we say no, we need a legal right to say no. If we say no and we do not have a legal right, then the applicant's going to sue the county, we're going to lose, and they're going to do their project anyway, and we're going to use your tax dollars to pay them. So you just must understand there are situations where our hands are tied and we don't have a choice. That's just the reality of it. Until we can change state laws, there's no other way to do it. So just wanted to get that out there.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Sandelli, anything?
I'm a huge proponent of the 2020 program, and it may not apply in this situation because of timing, but I would certainly encourage all of you that want to protect certain lands, that you look ahead and use the intellect that you have, the teams that you have to go and look for those in advance. It solves a lot of problems, and it gives us the restoration that we're all looking for. So,
Excellent. All right, at this time, does somebody wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion for approval from Commissioner Sandelli. Do I have a second? Second. Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any further discussion on the motion? The only thing that I would add to, I know it probably doesn't add comfort to people who don't want to see this kind of development, but there is a process. This isn't something that people decided on overnight and just said, yeah, let's do that to this neighborhood. There was an application process that had to be gone through. There was a thorough review by not only our staff, who are paid professionals who do this for a living, who are trained and educated, and who thoroughly go over the application of the codes that we have in place to make sure that this application met those codes and met those requirements in order to be able to move forward. Then it went to the hearing examiner, where she brought the public in, and she took in the public comment. She took in the evidence from the applicant as well. And much like a judge did, she weighed the evidence against the laws and against the facts of the case. And then she made a decision as to what she thinks is the most legally defensible and correct decision that she can make. And then that decision was forwarded to us here at the board. And so today's unfortunately, it's not a political decision. It's not a decision where you can just say, I don't like that. It is a decision that actually is based in competent, substantial evidence, and a decision that you have to make based on the laws and the people's property rights for both the applicant and the compatibility of the surrounding neighborhood. So with that, I'll go ahead and call the question. If there's no further discussion, are there any objections to the motion? Okay, I see no objections. Then that motion carries unanimously. All right, our next case is the Orange River RPD. At this time, I'd like to recognize our staff to introduce the item.
Excuse me. Good morning. Sharon Badamchian from Lee County Zoning. This request is to rezone 109 acres plus or minus from agricultural.
Sorry, excuse
So,
me.
yeah.
We just
So-
want to get on the right case.
Right
so that,
case.
There we go. Now it's all yours.
Thank you. Sorry. It is to rezone 129 acres from residential plan development to residential plan development. The intent is to increase the number of units from 160 to 258 and also provide a revised master concept plan. Going the wrong way. Basically, this is the property along Orange River Road. And this is the revised master concept plan showing one access from Orange River Road, one access from Staley Road. And one thing about this project is the subject property is not in the rural community preserve as the most of the area is. This one is a outline suburban, which allows up to 2 dwelling units per acre. The reason this was not included in the rural community preserve was for the past 30 years, there's a residential zoning on this property, which exceeded rural community preserve density when rural community was first created. So this one property is not part of the rural community preserve. It is within the Buckingham Planning District, but has a different future land use designation allowing up to 2 dwelling units per acre, and the request is for 1.99 dwelling units per acre. Hearing examiner heard this case and recommended approval, and they were, I believe, 53 participants of record for this case.
Very good. Any questions for our staff at this time on their recommendation or the case at all? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask the applicant to make a presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
For the record again, Richard Aiken of Henderson Franklin here in Fort Myers on behalf of the applicant here on DCI 2021-00001. We have our project team here with us this morning. On the slide, you'll see we have Jennifer Sapin, who's our planner with Baracco & Associates. Ms. Sapin and I will be doing the primarily presentation here this morning. We also have the rest of our project team here if you have any specific questions that they would be needed to answer. As staff indicated, the project is located approximately a little bit less than 2 miles from I-75. It's just to the south of Orange River Boulevard, to the east of Staley Road, bordering on the east of Staley Road, and just to the north of Homestead Lane. The property is 129.6 acres. The request is to increase the density from 160 to 258 units. There is an existing RPD on the property that was passed and put in place in 2005. That allows for 160 residential dwelling units. The density change would be from 1.23 dwelling units per acre to 1.99 dwelling units per acre. This request also includes a number of other changes to the master concept plan. There's a rerouting of the conveyance that moves through the property. There's also additional setbacks, landscape buffers, things of that nature that are added to increase the compatibility of the project with the surrounding area. As mentioned by staff, the hearing examiner recommended approval of the request with conditions. The applicant is in agreement with the hearing examiner's recommendation, and we would request approval of that. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sapin at this point to go through some additional detail.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Jennifer Sapin. I'm an AICP certified land planner with Baracco & Associates. As outlined in the hearing examiner's recommendation, as mentioned by staff, you can see here the hearing examiner's recommendations are in the purple box. The subject property is outside of the Buckingham Rural Preserve. Therefore, it is not appropriate to impose the restrictions of the Rural Preserve on this site. So the subject property is within the limits of the Buckingham planning community. This graphic shows a black and white dashed line. That's the planning community. However, the future land use are the colors shown inside. And you can see the color of this particular property is a yellowish, which is sub-outlying suburban. It is not rural, green like is shown in other areas of the planning community. The hearing examiner recommendation shown in purple states that increase in density by less than 1 additional unit per acre. The request provides a transition from the rural preserve to sub-outlying suburban lands. In addition, it provides a transition within the planning community itself. You can see the planning community is 5.5 miles wide. This project is over on the western boundary, a half a mile from that boundary. That hatched area of that half a mile, that is a 163-acre mulching facility, which that use is actually prohibited now in this planning community. So the boundary of this community is not rural in nature as well. The current RPD is shown here. It is approved for 160 units and has a variety of home sizes. You can see the larger homes are around the perimeter, but they are right along the perimeter of the project with the landscape buffer right in the back of the lot. There's a 40-foot easement shown in blue. That's the pass-through ditch that exists today and has existed since the early 50s. The access is provided in the red arrows you can see here on Orange River and Staley. The proposed plan shows those same access points unchanged. Density request is increased to 258 units and the consistent minimum lot size of 6,500 square foot. The biggest change between the plans, of course, is the realignment of the ditch. Currently, there's a small narrow ditch that goes through the property. Our proposal meanders the ditch around the perimeter of the project. This creates several benefits. There's environmental benefits, and it also allows for increased perimeter setbacks and buffering around the project. And as outlined in the hearing examiner recommendation, the TIS shows that the 98 additional units have a de minimis impact on traffic relative to the 160 units that are already approved. Hearing examiner shown here in purple. By objective measures, the hearing examiner outlined 4 components where the proposed site plan is an improvement over the existing site plan. The first is that the development is clustered. You can see here comparing the 2 sites. The proposed plan on the upper right consists of 36% of the site as preservation and/or water management. This is an increase of 10.5 acres over what is currently allowed. This increase of open space allows for water management, lakes, and pass-through conveyance. The second objective measure, open space, restored wetlands, and lakes buffer the perimeter of the project. The cross-section here on the bottom left shows what the perimeter of the project would look like. On the far left is the 30-foot landscape buffer that's approved on the current plan, and we're carrying that forward. The additional plantings and conveyance is shown here. This increases the perimeter setback from 30 feet to between 150 to 170 feet. The third objective measure is this flowway that runs through wetlands and vegetation, replacing the existing drainage ditch. The restored wetland and vegetation will filter nutrients and improve water quality existing the site, as outlined in the hearing examiner recommendation. By contrast, the existing configuration provides very minimal water quality treatment. Continuing that third component, further, the dimensions of the drainage easement in the existing plan are not sufficient to allow proper maintenance of the ditch. This slide shows 2 different cross sections. On the upper right is what is shown on the master concept plan. It shows that the ditch could fit in 40 feet. But when you actually apply the math of a 3.5 slope and the elevations, you actually need 60 feet for this. So the approved plan actually did not allow for the ditch and for maintenance around the ditch. The fourth objective measure that the hearing examiner outlines is that the existing ditch compromises the hydrology of the on-site wetland. It draws that water down of the wetland. The proposed replacement conveyance restores wetland hydrology and offers opportunities for water treatment. The wetland will be hydrated by the proposed water management system, and the plantings will provide diversity of wetland vegetation. And that, of course, will create increased foraging and nesting opportunities for protected species and wading birds. As the hearing examiner recommendation states, design features will improve the water quality entering the Orange River. The hearing examiner outlines that the site employs innovative open space design to preserve the native vegetation, provide visual relief along the road corridors, and buffer the adjacent uses. The perimeter setbacks and landscaping protects the character of the surrounding development by providing views to open space, including wetland, lakes, and vegetation. The graphics here show on the bottom left the current buffer, proposed buffer, and the upper right, you can see the acreage is greatly increased, 3.7 to 20 acres around the perimeter. The width is increased, and then you can see the quantifies of plants of what we would be provided on the current plan as compared to the proposed plan. The black and white table is on our master concept plan. It's the size, caliber, and species of plants that would be planted in this proposed conveyance system. Hearing examiner recommends that the proposed design improves the conveyance and storage capacity of the existing ditch, which is designed at a minimum to maintain the current conveyance capacity, and it allows the potential for additional conveyance. This will create the first improved segment of an existing constrained system, and this is consistent with the intent of the Lee County Strayhorn study. The master concept plan, as hearing examiner recommends, the master concept plan reflects enhanced landscaping with native vegetation along county rights-of-way, consistent with Lee plan directives to provide transitions from the rural preserve. In summary, the benefits of the conveyance system around the perimeter of the property increases perimeter setbacks. It creates a natural buffer around the project. It creates natural habitat for wading birds and native species. It will reestablish the groundwater of the wetland you see hatched here, hydrate that wetland, and it will improve water quality for the site and outfalling into the Orange River. Next, I will turn it back to Richard unless you have any questions of me.
Anybody have any questions at this point? Yeah, Commissioner.
I have a question. You quote 6,500-foot lots.
Yes.
So is that a 40-foot lot, or is it a 50-foot lot, or 60-foot lot?
50 foot wide by 130 feet deep. And the Lee County Land Development Code has criteria of size of lots that require open space. A 6,500 square foot lot is deemed by the Land Development Code to be large enough that open space is not required. But we are providing a majority of the site as open space.
So I know you're working for an applicant, but did they ever think about going back to the original 160 units and having larger lots that would sell probably better and for more money, like in Horse Creek, and that it's more compatible with the area instead of more houses?
Folks, order.
I'm sorry, please just keep it down.
Please, let me, at this point, it's good to pause and just give a little talk about decorum real quick. So we've got a long hearing today. This is going to be a long hearing, right? We've got 53 speakers today, and I know you're all angry. When you get a chance to talk, though, if we were to laugh at you, you'd probably hate that, right? That'd probably make you feel really bad. If we were to clap or boo you, you'd probably hate that as well, right? So just put yourself in the other speaker's shoes. And I think the key message is just be respectful. Avoid taking actions that would intimidate another speaker. Avoid taking actions that would intimidate even the decision makers up here. You know, booing and hissing is not really appropriate for this venue. We're in actually a quasi-judicial format here, just like a courtroom, right? So you wouldn't go into the judge's courtroom and boo or hiss or clap or cheer or laugh at people or make comments. So basically the bottom line is just be respectful, treat people the way you would want to be treated, and I think we're going to get through this just fine. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So my thought process, I know the area very well. I'm just thinking about being more compatible, and I still have questions for staff as far as the Buckingham Preserve outline area, because I know the area, to me, it's rural. But what I'm looking at, my vision of the area would be the larger lots, and I know they're looking at units, how many units can sell more, but the larger lots sell too, like in the other areas is compatible to that. I was just curious why the increase of density to change that footprint. Was that something the applicant was looking for?
So the plan you see here is the approved master concept plan. And during the hearing examiner, we had Matt Simmons, and he walked through the financial elements of this plan compared to the proposed plan. One of the problems with this approved plan, and one of the reasons it's not built, is the variety in home sizes. It's very difficult to market and have one sales team, one marketing group of materials when you have such a variety, from a 1 acre to 9,000 square foot. Those are kind of different home builders and different price points. So it makes the plan very difficult for a national builder. National builders definitely prefer uniformity in lot sizes. I would also say that the trade-off in benefit for smaller lots and clustering is outlined in the Lee plan as a goal. Clustering allows for greater preservation, and we are increasing 10.5 acres of open space and water treatment. So the trade-off there is lot size for clustered and which can create regional benefits.
Well, I'm asking, this is almost 2 units per acre, and what the county's been doing in the last few years now for Corkscrew, for example, in the overlay down the DRGR, 1 unit per acre, and that's selling really well down there with the national builders or anybody who wants to build. So that 1 unit per acre has been selling well in that area. So my question again was, I was hoping they wouldn't come back and ask for something even greater, because this is not part of that character of that community. I understand they're looking at it from a financial standpoint. I'm looking for is compatibility. This is something I would think I would see off of Colonial in the city, and we're trying to avoid that city view inside the area, because the southern part of Buckingham off 82 has been taken over by the annexation of the city, and you're seeing these large cluster, more units, more high density units. So that was my question. I still have questions for staff later about the Buckingham Preserve area, because the outlay, why that's not included in that. So thank you though.
All right, at this time, would you like to continue your presentation? Are there any further questions, commissioners, before they move on? Okay.
For the record again, Richard Aiken. I'd like to address briefly, so one of the conditions that is in the proposed conditions by the hearing examiner is that staff, or is that the county and the applicant in this case, enter into a maintenance agreement to address the conveyance ditch that currently flows through the property. There have been a significant amount of discussions between the applicant and the county attorney's office and staff about what this maintenance agreement would look like. And it's currently in draft format, and if this zoning was ultimately approved, we would ultimately have to come back to you with the agreement to be approved. But right now, the agreement basically provides for a 10-foot maintenance path to go around this conveyance ditch. And the conveyance, as explained by Ms. Sapin, currently goes through the middle of the property. It will be rerouted to go around the perimeter of the property, allow additional buffering, and allow additional water treatment capacity and things of that nature. But this agreement would provide that $100,000 in maintenance would initially be funded by the developer and placed into a restricted account with the county, that the HOA would then have the obligation to continue to fund and maintain that account as time went on. The agreement in its current form would also require the county to physically maintain the ditch, and that's at the county's request, that they want to have the ability to go in and maintain it to make sure it's done up to the county standards. However, the HOA will pay the county's costs through this maintenance fund. So when the county's doing it, it's being paid for privately in order to take that burden off of the county and the taxpayers. And I want to clarify what that maintenance obligation is. It just applies to the maintenance of the actual vegetation and other things within the drainage conveyance. If there were any actual need to replace pipes or any of the infrastructure within the conveyance, that falls back upon the HOA. That wouldn't be a county obligation. It wouldn't be within that fund. Currently, the county is providing 100% of the ditch maintenance fees, and so that's one of the additional benefits of what we've crafted as part of this request. In conclusion, I will, if there are any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them right now. As mentioned, the hearing examiner does recommend approval. We are in agreement with the hearing examiner's recommendation. I'd like to reserve some time at the end for rebuttal, as I anticipate we'll have some other members of the public to speak. But if there are any other questions of me that I can answer now, I'll be happy to do those.
Very good. Any further questions for the applicant at this point? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. All right, at this time, I'll begin calling the participants of record. Again, when you get up here, the microphone is all set for you. No need to adjust or touch the microphone. You're going to see on the top corner of the podium there, it looks like a stoplight. It's got a green, yellow, and red light on it, and it works just like that. When you start to get to the end of your time, I think it's at the 1 minute mark, the yellow light's going to come on. Means the same thing as like when you come to a yellow light on the road, just speed up. No, I'm kidding, that's a joke. No, but that's when you'll want to start thinking about how to wrap up your remarks, because when we get to the red light with 53 speakers, we do want to go ahead and make sure we call the next speaker and give everybody the appropriate time to talk. At this time, I'll go ahead and call the first speaker, and then I'll call who's speaking next. And if the person who's speaking next could just kind of stand by the doors there and be ready to come up to the podium when it's their turn, that'll help everybody get a chance to speak today. So, all right, let's call Karen Alfaro, followed by Don Blackburn. Karen, are you here? Okay, I don't see Karen. Don, go ahead. And then Betsy Burdette will be after Don.
Thank you very much. And
Morning.
Commissioner Pendergrass, thank you so much for your comments. 33 years ago, this property came in for permits the first time. And at that time, the residents saw that what could happen to Buckingham. And so the residents formed this group, the Buckingham Community Association, and we've been active for 30-something years. And there's people here, myself and others, that have been involved for 30-something years in trying to keep Buckingham preserved. In 1991, the Rural Community Preserve was approved 5-0 by the board, and it was considered at that time that Buckingham might be an amenity to Lee County as a beautiful rural country area. So, and we're very proud of that. So the first project that came in 1989 was vacated 5 years later because it didn't develop, and then in 2005 is when the existing plan, the 160 acres. Well, all the community came together. We went to all the meetings, came to the hearings, just like we're doing now, and discussed the existing project. And it got approved, and we were okay with that, because if you saw when they had it up on the screen, it had 1 acre lots, half-acre lots, and then 9,000 square foot lots. And we were all okay with that. What we'd like to see is, and the reason we're here is because of the 98 additional units. That's the only reason we're here, and the decrease in the size of the lots. So I'd just like for you to think for a minute, and I'm not having no disrespect for Cape Coral, but Cape Coral has 80-foot wide lots, and they're proposing 50-foot wide lots. So if you could imagine taking 100 and something acres of Cape Coral, but only smaller lots and plopping it down there in this rural area, it just would be out of place. I mean, this might be a good development in the developer's eye, but it's in the wrong location. I agree with Mr. Pendergrass, as everybody does. The area surrounded is very rural, and compatibility is an issue that's in the comp plan that you can use as a reason not to approve something if something is not deemed compatible. And that's where we're at. This isn't compatible with the surrounding area. So that's basically what is my comment. I've got a little bit of time left. If you could go back to the aerial, I'd like to show something.
Pause this time real quick while you pull that up. That'd be fine. And then, yeah, we could just put the aerial up for everybody.
Actually, we have the aerial. Slide 2.
Right there. That's it. Okay. Very good.
Yeah, the zoomed in aerial.
There you go.
Okay, I was hoping to see the one that was zoomed in a little further, but you can see it on this one. In the southeast corner, you can see the wetland that's on the property, the 16 acres of wetland, and then you can see that the woods that tie down into the property to the south where the 400-foot wide FPNL easement is. Well, that's an area of really nice oak trees that connect to that wetland, and there's an opportunity here, a missed opportunity by the environmental staff to connect those, because that acts as a wildlife corridor up and down there. You can see how wooded that area is. And just south of Staley Road, that's all county property that goes straight all the way down to, I believe it's 82, and which it's all owned by the county. So this is a great opportunity, and I'm sorry that they missed it. And that's, nobody's mentioned it, but that's an
I'd like to call
FPNL.
Betsy Burdette, followed by Bill Burdette. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Betsy's not here? Okay. How about Bill? There he is. All right, excellent. After Bill will be Keith Campbell.
Hi, I'm Bill Burdette, and I'm Vice President of the Buckingham Community Association. And back in 2007, I served as President of the Buckingham Community Planning Council, which partnered with Lee County to amend the Lee Plan addressing Buckingham. Lee County invested $50,000 into that project for us to hire a professional planner, provided the assistance of the planning department. We spent 2 years conducting surveys and community meetings to determine what the vision was for the community and to establish the priorities to affect that vision, or the policies to affect that vision. So the zoning proposal being considered today is incompatible with that vision and the policies that the Board of County Commissioners adopted to put into the Lee Plan. First of all, Goal 20 says we are to manage future growth in the Buckingham Community Plan area by preserving the existing rural and agricultural land use pattern, enhancing the historic and rural character, and protecting the unique historical and environmental resources in the Buckingham Plan area. This proposed project fails on all of these counts. Beyond that, Objective 20.1 states that land uses in the Buckingham Community Plan area will be developed in a manner that is consistent with the rural and agricultural land use pattern. Again, closely packed homes with tiny yards are not consistent with rural and agricultural land use pattern. Policy 20.1.5 states that density and cluster developments, which the applicant says this is a cluster development, Density and cluster developments will be based on upland acreage. The requested density in this proposal is based on gross acreage. So that is in violation with the Lee Plan. Policy 20.1.6 says that residential development adjacent to the rural community preserve should make appropriate transitions with graduated density and appropriate buffers. These are two separate conditions. Buffers do not satisfy the requirement for graduated density. And you cannot use neighboring properties to satisfy this requirement. This same property was rezoned with an increase in density in 2005, as you saw, and the proposed site plan in that application shows an appropriate way to graduate density with different size lots. Lee Plan Policy 1.111 says that sub-outlying suburban future land use category will be placed in areas where higher densities would be incompatible or where there is a desire to retain a low-density community character. The proposed rezoning fails to meet the required low-density community character.
Today. At this time, I'd like to call Keith Campbell, followed by Ken Carmichael. Keith, are you here? Oh, there he is. Ken Carmichael, after Keith. Okay. Morning.
Good morning, guys. One thing I think as a group, we all want to get a point across that we're not against the project. We're against adding more homes. Cape Coral keeps coming up. As you guys know, I used to be a resident of Cape Coral. The reason why I'm out in Buckingham is because after 15 years in Cape Coral, I still love Cape Coral. I still do my business out there. But I moved out here for my own privacy. My privacy to have neighbors that are really close, have time on my property, 15 acres with horses. I can bring my veterans out there and they can have that privacy of going through the healing process. Again, the project is not about against 160 units. The people voted on this 15 years ago before I even moved in here. They don't need the additional 98 homes. If the developer didn't do their full research before they started the original project and then they're just getting greedy with the 98, they need to understand this preserve has been around for a long time, 30-something years. Cecil commented on himself. They can do the same thing that they're doing down in Coconut Point. They can still make their money, but we don't need the additional 98 homes in this area. Traffic in the morning is horrible. You're gonna hear about traffic all the time. I can't tell you in the 3 years I've been there how many people I am pulling out of ditches because they're being run off the road on Steely Road, Tice Road. How many cars are rolled over in those ditches? Young kids that are constantly being run off the road because when they're walking their horses or their animals. So we don't need any more traffic. And I just ask you guys, whether you guys sat on the board when they made this change 15 years ago or so, stick with the 168 homes. They can still make that property look really good for everybody, but they don't need to add the additional 98 homes in that area. And, the people that live there, we moved there for a reason. We moved there because we want the country look, but we also still want to stay here in Florida and enjoy our paradise life. And that's why we're in a rural community. So hopefully you guys vote to keep it the way the plan originally was and use my time for someone else that needs to speak that's going to hit you with all the legalities that I don't know. But thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Ken Carmichael, followed by Pamela Chaplow. Ken, are you here? I don't see Ken. Let's go with Pamela Chaplow, followed by Bert Klein. Good morning.
I want to address the flooding issues that we have. Our community, I live off of Homestead Lane, so the houses south of us, during both major storms, we had a lot of flooding. My understanding is that with the approved 160 units with the existing ditch, which is failing, the existing ditch needs to be, repaired or addressed north and south of that current ditch. Moving to the 258 units with the new ditch line is supposed to improve the water flow and avoid the flooding issue. The problem with this is that at the last meeting, the developer said that, at least my understanding of it was, that this would only be successful if the county addressed the ditch system south and north of us. So I'm curious as if that is in fact the truth, is that going to be addressed? Because right now, I mean, just as it currently sits, we have a flooding issue that is a problem as it currently exists. Now, increasing, according to the developer, by increasing to 258 units, that improves the flow of the water to prevent flooding, which is funded county dollars through their HOA. My question is I go back to is, did the developer, was it in fact true that unless the county commits to repairing or changing or correcting the ditch system south and north of this development, whether it be 160 or 258, it's not going to matter, or it's not going to change anything unless the county fixes that. So, you know, and as far as the community itself goes, Horse Creek came in, and it's a great example of how it has complemented responsibly and become an asset to the Buckingham community. And as it stands now, with the increase of homes, I don't know that that actually makes that commitment to be an asset to our community. We know that development's going to happen. The biggest issue I see now, and traffic alone I know is not a concern at this point that can be addressed, but the actual flooding is an enormous issue. It affects everybody back there in the back, south of us. So I appreciate that being addressed. Thank you
very much for your comments. At this time, I'll call Bert Klein, and after Bert will be Lisa Coffey. Morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. First of all, I guess I'll just say, I know everything here is all legal and whatnot, but I still think part of it is crap with the traffic not being assumed. And I realize that this property not being part of the Buckingham Reserve is legal, but I think it's paper administration. If you walk outside this room and you go there, it's absolutely part of the Buckingham thing, and that gets to the compatibility that the other people are talking about. I won't say anything about traffic. Other people are going to speak far more eloquently than I about that. My other concerns, though, is during the previous hearings or meetings, what have you, they talked about the extra houses here are okay with fire, with police, with school. I don't know how that was actually done. I didn't hear from the teachers or the sheriff's department or whoever saying, yeah, we're good with this. Bring these 258 homes in. We'll accept them without any additional manpower or staffing or budget, and we're all good with that. I tend to believe that those people are not necessarily voting, yeah, we want the additional strain. In terms of additional strain, I'm also concerned about the well water. I know that the community is mostly going to be, for the inside the houses, is going to be city water, if you will, that's brought in from outside the preserve because we're all on wells. But if I remember right, there were 10 wells that were going to be sunk for the purpose of keeping the lawns green and things like that. I live quite close to where this is, and my well doesn't always have enough water pressure as we speak. So I'm interested in the impact of people just keeping their yards lush as opposed to those of us with rural land and we're not watering and doing all that kind of thing as we go. I'm also, like other speakers have said, interested in the water flow issue and the flooding and whatnot, if you will. And as you can tell, I'm against the whole thing. I don't know why it hasn't been built on for the last 15 years, but I hope it's not built on for 10 times that amount of time in the future as well. And I'll close by saying that, like many people in this room, perhaps most, I have a job, I have hurricane damage, and I'm taking the time to talk to you. I'm missing needed hours because of the importance of this decision to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, I'll call Lisa Coffey. Okay, Lisa's not here. Let's call David Cortez, followed by Susan Farrow. Okay, Susan's not here. So if Susan's not here, then Cheryl Fisher would be after. David Cortez, are you here? No, David's not here. Oh, okay, David's not here either. Okay, David's not here. Susan Farrow's not here. Okay, Cheryl Fisher, are you here? I am. Okay, come forward. And after Cheryl Fisher will be Sarah Fisher.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Fisher, and I am a Florida cracker. And I live directly across from where this development's going to be in River Grove Estates. Right now, that's already a concern because they want to put the entrance to that property directly across from our street. And at this time, it's very difficult to make a left-hand turn, which is a little bit dangerous because people are passing as well. I'm also a realtor, and I specialize in acreage properties. And I can tell you, they are very hard to find, and everybody wants them. So I completely agree with Mr. Pendergrass that they could sell those things like hotcakes if they went to the bigger lots, because that's what people who live here year-round want. They don't want the cookie-cutter homes anymore. I moved here from Miami 30 years ago after Hurricane Andrew to escape what's happening here now and give my family a better way of life. We were looking for a home when we fell in love with Buckingham because of its natural beauty, open spaces, big trees, and country lifestyle. Our kids went to Riverdale High School, which is bursting at the seams right now, and affectionately nicknamed it the redneck school by the other kids, but we loved it. I know Mike Greenwell's kids went there as well because they went to school with my kids, so he can relate to that school and that environment. Our kids grew up riding ATVs, fishing, hunting, horseback riding, participating in 4-H programs, to name a few. And they just love the area, and they never want me to sell my house. But of course, things began changing, and I know the Buckingham Rural Preserve was established to help protect our way of life. But unfortunately, over the years, this plan has been designed to protect us, has been challenged and kind of disregarded a lot by the planning, zoning, and permitting departments, and many things have slipped through the cracks accidentally. So we're also representing a lot of people that can't be here because they are working, who deal with the traffic, which I know has been addressed, is not of concern, but it is to us who live there. And they can't be here, but they're the ones who drive in that rush hour traffic every day, and it's getting worse and worse and worse with Portico, with Babcock, and all the other big developments going in all around us. The one on off of Gunnery, it's getting crazy. After Hurricane Ian, I had I'm getting at the end. Anyway, the people in this room are voters, and we all elected you to represent the best interests of our citizens. There is a saying written on the benches at the 6 Mile Slough: the frog does not drink up the pond in which it lives. We're not only drinking up our pond, but sucking it dry. If we continue on this path of mass and controlled development in East Lee, rural areas, our quality of life will cease to exist, and the wide open spaces, star-filled skies, and wildlife, just like my big trees I lost in the hurricane, will be gone forever. If this is what you want for our future in Lee County, I hope you don't. Thank you.
At this time, I'll call Sarah Fisher. Sarah's not here. How about Michael Goals? Yeah, Michael Goals, are you here? No. Jeff Gray? Jeff Gray? No. How about Porfirio Gutierrez Jr.? Porfirio? Okay. How about Mike Hansen? I'm here, but I'll pass. Mike gonna pass, okay. How about Patricia Heapy? Or Heffy? Patricia, yeah, H-E, that's right, H-E-A-P-H-Y? Oh, she's not here. Okay, Heapy, yeah, okay. How about Lauren Hunt? Okay, come on forward. And after Lauren would be David Hutto and Nancy Hutto if they're here.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you guys?
Good.
All right, so my name is Lauren Hunt, and I grew up in South Fort Myers on acreage, and we participated in 4-H and raising swine and poultry. We had horses and all kinds of livestock. After getting married, my husband and I decided to purchase land in the Buckingham area because we wanted acreage. We wanted that country feel to raise our family. We did not want to be surrounded by cookie-cutter communities and live with HOAs. And while we understand that the 166 homes have been approved, we do strongly oppose the additional homes that are proposed to be built. We have been homeowners and landowners in the Buckingham area for approximately 8 years, and we want to raise our children in the same values that we were raised with. The values of having the integrity of nature and giving the next generation the opportunity to use the land in the same ways. The development that is proposed will not only deteriorate a huge natural piece of land as it stands today, but the increase will further be a detriment to the Buckingham community. As it was noted, this parcel is not a part of the Buckingham community in the manner in which it has to abide by the Buckingham community rules. However, as it was stated by the citizens, this piece does sit in the middle of the Buckingham community. Therefore, that is why we are concerned with how this will deteriorate life as we know it. We have come to terms with the realization that the 166 homes will be built, and it will no longer look like it does, which is really sad to see the sunrises and sunsets as we come home. But we again ask that you do not approve the additional homes. I am concerned about the water flowway, as there is that drainage canal which they noted runs through the length of the property, which they are looking to eradicate. This land, or this drainage, as we call it, our creek, flows right behind our home. And during the storms, as well as just a normal summer, this creek fills completely. During Ian, it was overflowing. So if you eradicate that, and I get how they're rearranging it and rerouting it for their property, but how is that going to affect the homes in which it flows into, and how is that going to change it? So also, one thing to notate there is that the drainage that runs through goes all the way to Orange River, and then as it flows out to the Caloosahatchee, any debris that are coming from this property are going to also flow past the Manatee Park there. So now you have another accumulation of wildlife that's going to be negatively impacted by this. One thing that was mentioned by the Bracco Council is that the existing utilities are in place. And what they failed to mention is that the construction will be requested to bring those existing utilities all the way down from Orange River at the gas station, and then construction will have to be brought all the way to this property. So not only is it going to disrupt that 2-lane highway that we have that's already congested, but now we're going to add construction to it and make it a 1-lane highway for an unknown amount of time while they bring quote-unquote existing utilities. So the reason I brought up that I grew up here is that we want to maintain this way of life. I completely agree with Mr. Pendergrass. There's plenty of other areas that people could use this cluster homes outside of the Buckingham community if that's the lifestyle that they want. Thank you.
All right, David Hutto, are you here? Nancy Hutto, David and Nancy Hutto? Oh, there they are.
David Hutto, how you do? I'd just like to say that the Buckingham rural community is not a zoning issue for us. It's a way of life, you know. Most all of us who ever lived in the city left the city to go into a rural area. We're not against the 160 units that was approved before, but we are against adding another 98 units to it, because then all of those people over there will know when their neighbors flush their toilet. You know, there's the engineer said that that wasn't going to have an effect on our traffic problem. You know, only a fool would think you could put that many units in there with an average of 3 automobiles per household and not have a great effect on our already stressed highway. I live right across the street from the entrance that they proposed here, and between 6:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning, somebody has to stop on Orange River Boulevard to let me out of my driveway. And that's how bad it is. And I know we have this problem all over Lee County, but, you know, somewhere we have to stop something. We have to slow down because the county's growing faster than we can accommodate the traffic and the police department and fire departments. And so let's think this over real good before we go adding another 98 units to this little piece of property. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hutto. Nancy Hutto. And after that will be Claudia Cleese. Morning.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Hutto. I was born and raised in Fort Myers. I've lived in Buckingham for 48 years. We know there's going to be progress. We expect that. Horse Creek is a beautiful development out there, and it does complement Buckingham. But when you start adding 98 more homes into that small area, that doesn't compliment us. We don't want to be like Cape Coral. We don't live in Cape Coral. We live in Buckingham, and that's where we like to keep it. But the progress out there is not what we're against. We're against the additional 98 homes. And I really hope that y'all will take in consideration of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia Cleese. And then after that will be Carl Kropp. Morning.
So I'm going to keep mine very short and sweet. My primary concern is them actually following through with the plans that they made. So the ecological plan sounds great, but who will be holding them accountable? Obviously, the purpose for this plan is to have higher density of housing units approved, not some ecological philanthropy. How will we know that they will not just build these houses and ignore the rest of the plan? I would like some insurance on this issue.
Thank you. All right, Carl Kropp, followed by Barbara Kudrow.
Good morning. Like the majority of my neighbors, you know, all I'm doing is standing up here, I'm against the additional 98 houses. The 160 is going to be plenty of houses for that property. I really like what they've done as far as the new improvements, you know, as far as the new rearranging the ditch and all the landscaping. That's wonderful. Just make the lots bigger. You know, fewer houses, bigger lots. So they can use the same plan that they currently have, the new plan, but just make it 160 houses. It'll look a lot nicer. And I also object to the fact that the entrance, one of the entrances off Orange River connects to my driveway, which is, well, River Grove Lane. And I'll be looking right into the heart of this thing every time I leave my house. I mean, I'll be looking at all these little bitty houses after I just left my neighborhood. We all have over an acre of land per house, not 7 acres, which is what this development will have per house. 7 houses per acre as an average. That's ridiculous for out there. So even the 160 is a lot of houses per acre. But anyway, that's it. Just have a nice day.
Barbara Kudrow, followed by, Barbara's not here. Okay, thank you. Brenda Lewis. Okay, how about Don Lewis? And then after Don Lewis will be Terry Lodge.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
My name's Don Lewis. I've lived in Buckingham for 5 years. I'm opposed to the increased development for 2 reasons. One, if you listen to television right now, Lee County Water is telling us to cut back on our water usage because the aquifer is under stress. And regardless of whether this water comes from wells or from a city source, it's all the same aquifer. So we're asking for trouble by increasing this density. The other thing is, of course, increasing the density is not in keeping with the surrounding areas that are known as Buckingham Rural Preserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Lodge, followed by Jennifer Mallard, or Maillard. Not here? No. Okay, thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Terry Lodge. I've been a resident of Buckingham since 1986. I know Brian from participating with the Realtor community a lot. I know a lot of you actually, or a lot about you, and I think that the reason, first of all, let me say this is a home run for me. Everybody I voted for is actually sitting here. That's never happened before.
It's a red shirt you're all wearing today.
I'm not sure I'm happy right now, but I'll know better at the end of the day. You know, I'm appreciative that you're sitting here. I know your job is difficult, and to know that the problems that exist throughout Lee County, certain things can and cannot be not accepted based on what I'm learning today, which is unbelievable. But anyway, I'm looking at it now from the realtor community because everything I wrote about I'm not going to discuss. But I am going to say that I'm sitting with two top producers. Cheryl's a top producer. We all specialize in Buckingham. 3 of us live in Buckingham. That community for 160 acres will sell like hotcakes. Right now, we have 4.5 months of inventory on our market. We have an average sale price in Lee County right now of $390,000. That is our market. That's what the people are looking for. They're looking for larger properties that they don't get today with these cluster homes and these smaller properties because the land cost is not conducive with having some green space. None of us want the water flow. It's going to be an issue. I can tell you 6 developments throughout Lee County right now that were supposed to be better for the environment, whatever, that have created nothing but problems with watershed. I disagree with a lot of these reports based on actually living here. I would really like to see you vote against the increase in density. I know that a lot of you, like me, like hunting, fishing, wildlife. I mean, that's our lifestyle. This property is very irregular since it is right in the heart of Buckingham Preserve, and yet it's that little piece that's not connected. So they are allowed to do certain things that the other parts are not. But I think that you're allowed to vote against the increase of density, and I hope you will honor us, your constituents, the people that this really benefits, by not approving that. And thank you for your words. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Felipe Mallard? And then after Felipe will be John Marcantonio.
Sorry.
And real quick, before we get into the presentation, was this something submitted at the hearing below as part of the evidence?
I did. Yeah, I did submit it. I can give you more if you want.
May I ask our hearing examiner, do you recognize this presentation as evidence that was submitted?
Well, I modified since.
So you have modified it since the hearing?
Well, what's happened, I proposed one. But before they talk, just before, like we have like 30 seconds before my presentation, so I reuse some of their proposition, and I'm sure they're going to recognize some of the slide who was already there.
I just asked because we're required to only review evidence that was presented at the hearing below.
I can go just to the page who was already there, I guess, if you want. Well, this one I can because this is what they proposed to us, but I was not enough time to talk. If you want, I can give you a paper copy for each of you.
Yeah. Again, let me just get our attorney to weigh in because it's, again, we're going to be scrutinized for this one, so we want to make sure that we only accept evidence that was presented at the hearing below.
That is correct. It looks like the picture is from.
Yes, it's what I modify. I take the picture and I make the comment of what this information.
So the picture looks like it was already presented below, and it looks like just notations
from the picture
from his thing. So I don't see any new evidence that wouldn't be part of the record below.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification.
So can I do from the beginning? So?
Yep, and that's fine. And then go ahead.
No, I go to trying to be fast, but I don't know. Can I give you a copy of each of you? I print a copy.
You hand it to the, yeah, there you go. Hand it to the clerk. Oh, can you just reset his time? Thanks for that heads up.
I guess you can give one of each for each of them. Please.
There you go.
Sorry.
All right, everybody ready? Go ahead and start oh yeah, hit play on your slideshow. There you go. All right,
so pretty much this is, my name is Philippe Maillard for the record. So I presented during the hearing, and this is the information they give us. I take some picture because it's difficult to remember when you leave, but pretty much the same to what they say. As you can see, the yellow, it's inside to the Buckingham community, but you can see also the dark green is recognized by the Lee County as a critical environment area. So that is also from the presentation they give us. Well, it was from the record, so I found it. So this is the property they want to build there. You can see the size. And also, you have misinformation everywhere because one place say 129. On their documentation, it say 128.79. I'm trying to go fast. So here, if you're looking, I'm trying to find, you see the information they give us on the top. He said 2 DUC by acre, so that is an half acre place. That is what is allowed. So I'm trying to do a lot of different calculations, but you can see pretty much only if you remove the preserve, the lake, and the road, I can get 0.499, but I do not get 0.5. This is the closest I can get. So I don't know how you calculate. The same to what other predecessor talked. The acre in Cape Coral is 0.23, is 2 lot. I continue, I'm trying to go fast. Also, the information was provided to us, as you can see, you have the water management. They say, oh yes, the new plan, you have more acre, but it's ready, if you look at that from their information, is ready to allow to have the water discharge and the quality of the water. So it's not an improvement, it's pretty much to respect the water management. So if you're looking here, that also, they say they have passed through, but that is also for the water management to allow flooding. The need also, that is another pass-through, is also for the water management. If you're looking here, really, comparatively to the papers they present to that, the upland preserve was on the primary plan was 10.4 acre, now it's 6.4 acre. So that is a reduction of 47% on our upland preserve. If you go to the wetland preserve, it's pretty much similar, but it's only 24%. Also, when they do the calculation, I don't know what's happened, but I do not put this pass-through are ready for the water management. They're not for the preserve and the wetland. Also, if you calculate the total on air paper, you have a discrepancy of about 1 acre. I know myself, if I lose 1 acre or if I win 1 acre, I will know that on my property. If you look on I give you the link here of the web page, and I talk that, by the way, that what everybody call a ditch is called, in Lee County, is called a straight horn drainage. Yes?
Thank you very much for the presentation today.
Okay.
And at this time, I'll call John Marcantonio, and then Gerald Martinez would be after that. Is John here? Okay, I don't see John. How about Gerald Martinez? Here. Okay, Gerald, come forward. And then that will be Kelly Mastriana after Gerald. Oh, go ahead and come forward, Gerald.
Being from Louisiana, I can hardly say my name in 2.5 minutes, much less speak. I live directly across the street from this piece of property. When I stand on the end of my driveway, I'm looking right at it. And traffic, at the staff hearings, I asked the question, has anybody from staff been out there and seen this? Well, what I got was dead silence. So I'm telling you, traffic is a super issue there. If you were going to, Maxwell and Associates sent Matt Simmons here as their representative, appraisal firm, and said for this to be viable, that they needed to put 258 units here. Well, you know, if you were going to buy a crap piece of property to develop in Lee County, this would be it. 129 acres. About 25 to 30% of its wetlands. The biggest transfer station, one of the biggest electrical transfer stations in the county, directly abuts it to the east that nobody wants to live next to. I do not feel I or anybody in this room has a responsibility to save these guys because they made a bad buy. 160 units, we were here in 2005. Same deal, we had tons of people, and we all went away finally when the agreement was we'll do 160 units and we'll live with that. We don't want 160 units, but we will live with that. I just hope y'all have the wisdom that the commissioners had back in 2005 that dialed this thing back then to 160 units. And I think that's what everybody in this room is really hoping for. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Mastriana? Kelly, are you here? I don't see Kelly. How about Gwen McCann? Gwen? I don't see Gwen. How about Dennis McEltrott? There you go. We have. Well, the way the rules work is if you had an attorney, your attorney could come and represent you, but. Okay.
My name's Dennis McEltrott. I've lived most of my life out in Buckingham. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. The biggest problem I have is the additional units per acre. And if you talk to a lot of folks in the county, they feel like we really need to start, instead of trying to maximize density, to kind of roll it back because of all the problems you guys are really familiar with, more than I am. So my position is if it's been approved for 160, let's just keep it that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. How about Bill McEltrott? And then after Bill will be Tom McEltrott.
Thank you. I'm Bill McEltrott. I'm a 51-year resident of Lee County, 37 of it in Buckingham. And I live a block west of this property. And I know everybody here knows, and you guys know, we're witnessing the end of something that used to be in Lee County. There's really, we had no guarantees when we bought out there that things would stay close to the way it was. But what we already have in Buckingham is what a lot of these developments try to market but seldom achieve, in that our neighbors, we live far apart, but we have a lot in common. And one of the things is to try and live the way we lived before and let it see go that way going forward. In America, we have a car culture, and if you do the math, this is 258 homes here. Just west of us at the old junkyard, there's going to be 130 units going in. And I know the Malloy hayfields have been sold, and there'll be 600 homes in there with the possibility that it may move to 1,000. It's already been applied for. So if you do the math and times 2 cars per household, we're talking about close to 3,000 more cars, 2,800 cars. And I know the county commission can't deny something due to the traffic issues, but you also cannot do the improvements needed to mitigate the problems that come because of the covenant with the Rural Community Preserve. I mean, Orange River Boulevard is 2-lane, and it's going to be 2 lanes, and it can't be widened to 4 or 6. So in a nutshell, I mean, we know it's coming, and there'll be all those cars, but unfortunately, there won't be a way to mitigate the issues that come with all those cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom McEltrott, followed by Lauren McIntyre.
Good morning. My name's Tom McEltrott, and I want to note that Bill Burdett covered a lot of the key issues with the comprehensive plan problems very, very well. I think his information should be taken into consideration. It sounds like lifestyle and traffic are not important, are important to Buckingham residents, but the question here is whether or not to increase this density. Should the county allow an increase in density of over 60% to ensure the developer's profits? Like the applicant, I'm in business too, but I don't have that option with the county. So I don't feel that that's something we must guarantee their profitability. The applicant is proud of their design, county staff approves of it. Sounds like they simply need to ratchet up their lot size to live with the current density that property is zoned for. And I support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren McIntyre, followed by Dixie McClune. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Lauren McIntyre. I moved to Florida from the beautiful, wild and wonderful West Virginia back in 2017. I fell in love with the picturesque Buckingham because it reminds me of home, and I'm proud to call it my home. My family and I enjoy the country living as residents right on the Orange River. This zoning request aims to destroy that way of life and our flora and our fauna. And you can see that our community vehemently opposes this request. At the last hearing, I requested a proposed site plan with the lot lines drawn so that the density can be visualized. This still has not been provided. I agree that the new plan is probably better than the old one with the buffers that they have in place in the open space. All they need to do is arrange their home sites to meet the density of a maximum of 160, and then we can all go home. I am a realtor, a top producer as well, like some of my constituents here. And I serve Buckingham, and I can tell you with complete confidence that 160 home sites, whether they're an acre, more than an acre, 3/4 of an acre, whatever it ends up being, they will have no issues selling those and make hand over fist profit. If your builder says otherwise, then you need a new one. If I can say no to the dollar, the county can too. I propose that the Luckett Road extension and Sunshine Boulevard extensions be completed before any more building in or around the Buckingham community be approved. Traffic may not be something that we can use as an issue here, but it is a problem. It is something that has to be considered when we're developing. And using that will give us an idea of what our traffic implications really would be once those two extensions have been completed. So I ask for you today, please vote for the people of Buckingham over the profit. Thank you for your time.
Dixie McClune? Dixie, are you here? Dixie? Okay, I don't see Dixie. How about Thomas Uman? Thomas Uman. Oman? I don't see Thomas. How about Kathleen Paget? And then I'll have Shane Parker after Kathleen. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Paget, and I too live in River Grove Estates, which the street is going to be directly across from their entrance. So that is a major problem right now, is a big concern. Again, we all know that this is kind of like, the property we're discussing is like an island within Buckingham. If you were to drive through the area, though, there was no way you could tell that was any different from any of the surrounding area. It's 129.6 acres, whereas if you look in search, you find that Buckingham is about 11,686 acres. So this is 1%, and so this 1% is going to spoil the whole community. You will be hard pressed to find any two homes that look alike in all that acreage, and you're going to be putting a development by adding, 160, as we've all said. We're okay to live with that because that's what it is, but adding that additional. The other concern we've heard about was the traffic that's adding with all the cars. Also the concern about fire, EMS, grocery, fast food, library, restaurants, police, schools, with all the other developments that are going on in the area just outside of the Buckingham area. It's already, you go up to either Publix's up on Palm Beach, no matter, unless you go on a Sunday morning at 7 o'clock, it's going to be hard to find a parking spot. And they are redoing the library there. That library there in Riverdale has, 15 parking spots maybe, and now we're adding all these homes that are going to also have to use that library. I have lived in New York City and moved out of it because of the density. I had lived in Pembroke Pines. We moved here in September of '95 to our little acreage. And love it. It was the place to live. It was a special place. And now it just seems like the density that they want to put in that area is just not acceptable. It's not fit in with the community and the plans, as Bill Burdett had mentioned. I'm sure that the larger lots, if they build the 160 homes, it will be a draw. I mean, homes in our community, they have no problem selling. We live on, our homes have 1 to 5 acres just right across the street from this development that they want to put 298 homes on. It feels like when you look at the planning that the homes that come up to that should transition to the Buckingham community. And I do not see how this is an island within it, that there is no transition. So we hope that you will consider all of that and vote for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane Parker. Shane, are you here? Okay. How about Christy Patrick?
I'm here.
Morning, Christy. After Christy will be Richard Paul.
Good morning. I am one of the lucky ones that live in River Grove Estates, which is directly across from this new community that we're discussing today. We have one way in, one way out. And that one way is directly across from that proposed main entrance, which is only going to add to the traffic nightmares that our community deals with on the daily. Since you can't base your votes based on traffic, pretty much everything I wrote is for nothing. So now I'm going to discuss a couple other points. Commissioner Pendergrass, you brought up the one house per acre like Horse Creek. That is great. Our community should not have to bear the burden of a bad investment by this property owner. If he feels that he's not going to make a profit, that's not our problem. It shouldn't be our problem. The other thing they talked about was that drainage ditch. We live north in River Grove Estates, as I said. We have lived there for almost 9 years. Not once has the ditch in our back property been maintained by the county. They send us forms every so often asking, do you approve us to come onto your property and clean? They haven't done anything. How can we trust that this ditch is going to continue to flow from their area if it doesn't even flow from our area to the Orange River? Another thing is I take exception to the statement about the mulch facility not fitting in with the rural community. Yes, it does. It really doesn't, but it does. But she also forgot to talk about the communities that are around that. There's a north side, there's a south side, there's east and west. The mulch facility is to the west, I'm to the north. We have livestock. My kids show in 4-H. My husband is involved in 4-H. There are people in the back of that community that also have livestock, and their children are involved in 4-H. We just ask that you think twice about adding the additional 98 houses, and then we continue with the 160. We know we can't deny the property owner their rights to develop their property, but we can do it in a smart way, and smart growth is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Paul? Richard, are you here? Okay, I don't see Richard. How about Judy Piccola? Judy, are you here? Okay, I don't see that. How about Sandy Portella? Sandy Portella? I don't see Sandy. How about Beverly Reed? Beverly Reed? I don't see Beverly. How about Beverly Ritchie? Beverly Ritchie? I don't see Beverly. How about Jean Roth? Jean Roth? Okay. How about Michael Sabota? Mike's not here. Okay, how about Julie Ward? Julie Ward? Oh, excellent. Oh, do you want to? Julie, we've been going for almost 2 hours. If it's okay, why don't we take a 10-minute recess just so everybody can get a little break, and we'll come back with Julie. How's that sound?
On the record that I really have to pee.
All right, very good. We'll resume at 11:30. Yeah, she did. All right, good deal. All right,
I know,
we'll
I
go ahead
speak
and start our
quietly
time.
anyway. Hi, I think I speak for all the residents of Buckingham that, you know, we have a feel of Buckingham Preserve out there. I bought out there 4 or 5 years ago in 2019. And I bought out there, I'm a nurse at Lee, and I have a stressful job, as I'm sure a lot of you do. And I can tell you that the hospitals are taxed. They're breaking at the seams. And, you know, maybe administration at schools and hospitals might tell you one thing, that, oh, we can handle more people, just bring them all in. But from a nurse's perspective, and I'm sure from a teacher's perspective, we have our own view of what is really working, what's really not. But let me speak with the legalities. The 160 was already approved, and like Horse Creek, it's a very pretty neighborhood. And that fits in with the community, the feel. I'm on Team B for the hurricanes, which means I go in after they call the all clear. I drove on Orange River Boulevard, and I jokingly said I drove on Orange River because the flooding I drove through in my truck, thank God I had a truck, to make it in all the way to Health Park was quite atrocious, you know. So to add more problems, more ditch, or not maintaining the ditch or whatever, okay, I'm nervous. And I'm looking at my time. Anyway, I guess I'm just asking for help, you know, like, stick with the community feel. I'm sure they could sell these homes. I mean, people are just dying for homes with, like, you know, with the rural feel and with a little bit of land to enjoy. You know, there's properties all over Lee County, and there's communities all over Lee County that have a feel, and Buckingham has a feel. Sanibel has a feel. You can't put a McDonald's on Sanibel, you know, and just like that, you know, we don't want that kind of progress in Buckingham. We want to preserve the feel and the look of Buckingham. You know, like you have Gulf Harbor, and you have all these communities where people choose to live. And we choose to live in Buckingham. And if the 160 wants to be developed, which was approved 30 years ago, I guess that's what has to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. John Wilkes Sr., followed by Sandra Wilkes.
Good morning. My name is John W. Wilkes. Just leave the booth off. I lived here in Lee County since 1956. I was a classmate of Frank Mann, who was one of our county commissioners of District 5. Mike, you got big shoes to follow. The disregard for road safety in our communities is very evident. All of you ran on the premise to promote safety and the betterment of our roads. Yet our roads are overloaded and falling into disrepair. Neal Road out there where I live has ruts a foot deep on the sides. It's fallen into disrepair at this time. The rezoning of this planned development will add 98 more homes to our county. Our roads in Buckingham are already overloaded. There's no plans to get Lehigh Acres people to their jobs. They take the shortest route through Buckingham. The rezoning of this will add more cars to our community. By the way, it was originally rezoned back in 2005, which the Buckingham Planning Committee agreed to. When was enough not enough? Note, 160 units times $375,000, that's the average cost of a home now, equals over $60 million. Add another 98 to that, and you got $36 million more going to another state other than Florida. If you take 3 cars times 258, that equals 774 cars that'll be on our roads in Buckingham. We're so overloaded now, you can't hear yourself think out there in the evenings when cars are coming home. Safety is a big concern to us out there. You can't even walk along the sides of the road, much less ride a bicycle or ride a horse. My wife used to ride her horse out there years ago. We moved there in 1974 to get away from the hustle and bustle in Fort Myers. And it's getting closer to us all the time. I appeal to y'all, do your job, uphold the citizens of Lee County, and vote nay against this rezoning. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Sandra Wilkes. Morning.
Glad to see there is a Mike Greenwell. We have never been able to see you or talk to you. I have lived in the rural community of Buckingham 45 years, where population density was very low and there is open land with few homes and other buildings. Wildlife is more frequently seen there because of the absence of people, buildings, and not so much traffic now. We like our roosters crowing and our chickens cackling, the smell of manure and hogs. Rural areas are known as the country. In a suburban community, many, many homes on small lots are built closely together. They have no yards or privacy and no wildlife. People living there don't like roosters, chickens, cows, horses, or the aromas of such. These suburban communities don't belong in the country. If you pass the additional 98 units, then 258 units will be built, allowing 2 units per acre. This will consume the 129-acre parcel totally. Where is the extra land to contain the 11.48-acre wetland, the water system, the buffers, the bike paths, the streets, and 7 lakes? And here are some safety concerns. With no sidewalks, children will be playing in the streets, people will be parking in the streets, and walking dogs in the streets. I know because I have visited someone last week in one of these communities. First responders would have difficulty in any emergency. A Lee County Fire Commissioner has told me this type of community is a fireman's nightmare. We are also required to fence or enclose pools for child safety. What about those 7 lakes? Since when do we change our rural way of lifestyles to please suburban lifestyle when it doesn't belong inside our rural boundaries? We are not against the 160 units, and we would respectfully like to request that you send this back to the staff for further review. Buckingham lives also matter. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our participants of record. At this time, we would like to provide the applicant with an opportunity to respond. This is the part where I just remember, to be respectful during the response. This is part of the process. They get an opportunity to respond to what was raised. And the board has an opportunity to ask them questions as well. So, good morning.
So for the record again, Richard Aiken. I'd like to ask...
We don't do questions and answers, ma'am. I'm sorry. No, we... What's your name? Patricia Cleets.
K-L-E-E-S.
I have Claudia Clees.
That's my daughter, and I spoke too last time. My name is Patricia
All right. Do we, Michael, let me ask our attorney real quick. What do we do in matters where we have somebody who says they spoke, but their name does not appear on the participant of record list?
If I had the transcripts, I can look at it, but I don't think all these people are going to lie right now. So if she's not on the list, but she spoke, then the list just needed to be updated.
Okay. All right, folks, we don't answer hands at this point. It's not like that. I apologize. Were you left off the list? Yes. Okay. I'd like to just have some verification. I mean, this is regardless of how this case is going to turn out, we're going to court, right? So we want to make sure we have the best body of evidence, the most thoughtful, well-performed hearing that we can. So if we could just pause, ma'am, real quick and give our attorney a chance to make sure that it's okay to have you speak, that'd be great. Mr. Jacob?
Yes, as Ms. Collins has just indicated, she did speak at the hearing, and as I indicated, she indicated she spoke at the hearing. The applicant acknowledges this, so we're going to.
Okay, very good. And then one more question. The gentleman, raise your hand again, sir. What's your name? Okay, did he speak as well? Do you recall? Yeah, stand up real quick so the hearing examiner can see. There you go. Yeah, he did. Okay. All right. So we'll take Ms. Cleese, and then we'll take you afterwards, Mr. Pickering.
Thank you for considering me. And I'm very happy that I got a chance to speak. My name is Patricia Cleese. I operate a horse ranch on Orange River Boulevard on 15 acres with a riding school. And I operate, and I have that farm since 2001. On that 15 acres, I preserve 88 acres of woods and hammocks to keep the area irrigated and nice and open for wildlife. My customers love that area, and it would be worth to preserve it. I do it on my own expense. For that 20 years, we saw 4 hurricanes. We saw Charlie, we saw Wilma, we saw Ian, and we saw Irma. In all those hurricanes, the whole area around my place was flooded, and my place was the only place that stayed dry. Why? Because I had all the hammocks and all the swamplands not drained. I maintained it, I keep the drainages open, and I don't even have access to the river where I flood everybody. So my property stayed dry over all those hurricanes. And guess what? Because I have the woods, I did not even have a lot of hurricane damage through all that 5 hurricanes. You know why? Because my big oak trees and the way the land is made by nature protects this structures, and we for all that storms and that typical Florida weather. That's why. Now, looking forward, on my 15 acres, I maintain 1 house and 1 quarter for the stable hand. That is 2 homes on 15 acres, give and take 5 acres per home if I take out the woods. Now, I did developments in Bonita Springs in my past. We developed what is called Citrus Park. I know about all those risks, and I know what it's all involved to do this. When my father developed that in 1980, we developed 2,000 houses and mobile homes in Bonita Springs. But this area where we are right now is not qualifying for any of those. For numerous reasons we already heard in that audience. Needless to say that we are protected and gave the promise from the Lee County to preserve the land under the Lee County Ordinance as a rural preserve, number 1. Number 2, flooding is a big issue. We already heard that. And the bad infrastructure, what will not change, will be also a problem.
Thank you very much. Your time has expired. Thank you, Ms.
I will cut it short.
I have to get to Mr.
This development is without any consideration of the impact and on the consequences for the Buckingham community.
Okay.
And it is daunting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pickering, go ahead. Yes, if you could, since your name wasn't on the list, could you spell it just so we get it right? Thanks.
I live in Buckingham, as you assume. I've been there 55 years. I'm also on the board of the fire department for Tice. The main thing I'm going to bring to you is the ISO rating of the area, which is the instrument, is insurance response time. And if we get the traffic, which we can't say anything about traffic, which is a crock, 2011, that's 15 years ago, 13 years ago. If that fire department or that ambulance can't get through to your home, these people's homes, a heart attack is very severe. If you don't get there in a certain amount of time, they're gone. So what I'm saying is you got to consider what the ISO rating is going to be in this area with more traffic, more cars, more people. Leave it at 160, please. Use some common sense here and courtesy to the area, please. And the insurance rating for the ISO, when it goes up, that means your insurance goes up. Everybody's insurance in this area goes up. It's going to go up high enough as it is with Ian coming through here. We all know that. We're all looking at the increases if you've still got insurance. So that's my saying to y'all is just help us out as far as being able to flow through and the safety of the community. That's the whole thing, the safety of the community. I've been there 26 years and I've seen a lot of improvements and a lot of things that go on and hold things up as far as responding to house fires, heart attacks, car accidents. And it's getting really terrible. Okay? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks so much. That concludes the list of speakers then. Mr. Moore, could you find out why they were not included on the list of speakers so that that doesn't happen again? I'd appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
All right, at this time, I'd like to afford the applicant the time to respond to what was raised in public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's not the process. I apologize. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd like to ask Carl Baracco, who's our engineer on the project, to come up. He wants you to address some of the conveyance issues that were raised by the public.
I don't think so. Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Morning, yes.
For the record, Carl Baracco, and I may jump around a little bit because I'm going to try to address the issue, so please bear with me. First, I want to establish a few things. There is a wetland on the site. The wetland, and I'll use my word, is dying. The environmental professionals, I think, will all agree that wetland is dying and will continue to degrade, and at some point in time will no longer exist. The other thing that I think we need to understand going into this is that the existing conveyance that we're talking about, the conveyance through the property as it exists today, and that as it's proposed in the current zoning, is restriction. It's in fact the weak link in the system from south to north. You heard from a resident from the south, and in her words, the drainage is failing. The county has studied the area, and the county does have plans that would improve drainage from the south to the north. Without this project, this conveyance within the project will continue to be the weak link and would preclude any improvements from south to north. The proposed project intends to maintain the existing flows, but also provide future possibilities for increased conveyance if that a project is undertaken by the county or any other group to increase flows and improve drainage to the south. And again, when you increase drainage to the south, that means you also have to increase it to the north all the way to the Orange River. You've heard from a resident earlier this morning, and I believe she lives on the north side. She referred to the ditch as a creek, and she's correct. If additional water is brought from the south, improvements on the north also have to be made. But this project doesn't do that. This project maintains the existing flows to the north, but it does provide that capability for the drainage from the south and the north to be improved all the way to the Orange River. Irrigation was brought up and water usage, and it's important to note that in the existing plan, there is an irrigated area. The proposed plan also has an irrigated area, but the irrigated area in this plan is reduced. So therefore, the water use for irrigation in this plan would be lower than that of the existing zoning plan. In addition, in either case, the South Florida Water Ministry will have to review and approve any water use permits. But again, this plan reduces the water required for irrigation compared to the current zoning. We also heard from an existing resident that utility construction along Orange River Boulevard would present issues with traffic. There's always those things with construction, but again, it's important to note that whether it's this plan or whether it's the proposed plan, central utilities would be placed in the Orange River Boulevard right-of-way. So either way, they're going to see that construction. We've heard some comparisons with Horse Creek, and it's important to note that Horse Creek does have larger lots, but each one of those lots has a water use well for potable water, and it has a septic tank. And I think you all know that we're trying to get away from that type of system in Lee County. So if we're going to present and construct a central sewer system which brings utilities down the boulevard, that costs money. In order to take that dying wetland and remediate the drainage, in other words, do away with the existing ditch which bisects the wetland and drains the wetland and is killing the wetland, and relocate that so that wetland can then come back to life and be a viable wetland, as I believe the environmental consultants have agreed, that takes money. If we're going to increase water quality and improve water quality going to the Orange River and to the Caloosahatchee River, that takes money. Those are the reasons that this additional density is needed, because it takes money to make all those improvements, and those improvements are for all of us. In my professional opinion, the proposed plan is significantly better than the existing plan. And please consider, if this plan isn't approved, there's a good likelihood that the existing plan won't be financially feasible, at least for a long time. If that happens, the residents lose the potential of having a better conveyance system from south to north, and all of Lee County loses the possibility of having a significantly improved water quality discharge from all the areas south of this project and from this project itself, which is now a grazing area. That water then discharges into the Orange River, directly into the Orange River and the Caloosahatchee River. This project would have a significant improvement in water quality entering both the Orange River and the Caloosahatchee River. That's all I have this morning. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Very good. Do we have any questions for the engineer of record here? No? Okay. Thanks, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
So there's been a lot of discussion today about this parcel and its proximity to Buckingham and its proximity to the Rural Community Preserve. And Commissioner Pendergrass asked a question earlier about sort of the historical background and how it is that this property came to not be within the Rural Community Preserve when many of the properties around it are. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to walk you through some historical background. We went into this at length at the hearing examiner, but I'll walk you through it as well so you can clearly understand where we are. In 1990, which was the time of the original Lee plan, the future land use on this property was outlying suburban, and it allowed for standard density of 3 dwelling units per acre on this parcel. In 1989 and 90, there was a zoning that was approved on this parcel that took it from Ag 2, or agricultural, to an RPD that allowed for 220 units at that time. That was an 89 zoning, total of 1.69 dwelling units per acre. In 1991, the Buckingham Rural Preserve was created, and this parcel was not included in the Rural Preserve. It's never been in the Rural Community Preserve, not since the Rural Community Preserve's inception. In 1991, there was a footnote that was added to the outlying suburban future land use that reduced the allowable density on this parcel from 3 to 2. And so it was one of 2 parcels within Lee County that were in the outlying suburban future land use that actually had a 2 dwelling unit per acre instead of 3 dwelling unit per acre future land use or standard density range. In 1993, the MCP from that 1990 zoning that I just explained to you or just told you about was vacated because no development had occurred. And that was, at that time, there was a provision in the Land Development Code that provided if no development occurred under an MCP within a certain period of time, it was vacated. And so that was how the process worked under the Land Development Code at that time. In 2005, that was when the property came in and got its existing zoning, which was an RPD that allowed for 160 units or 1.23 dwelling units per acre. And then in 2007, the future land use changed again, this time from outlying suburban to sub-outlying suburban, and it moved it to 2 dwelling units per acre. Actually, the density didn't change because, as I explained a minute ago, there was already a footnote keeping it at 2 dwelling units per acre. But this change was really to just sort of keep internal consistency with the Lee plan and delete the fact that there was a footnote that sort of confused things. So since the inception of the Lee plan in 1990, the future land use, the standard density on this property has never been less than 2 dwelling units per acre. It was 3, and it was 2, and it remains 2 today. It's never been within the Rural Community Preserve since the inception of the Lee Plan or since the inception of the Buckingham Rural Community Preserve in 1991. I also like to point out, and we talked about this with the hearing examiner a little bit, but I want to walk through some of these. In 2010, there were some changes to the Buckingham Community Plan. In 2018, the Buckingham Community Plan was also moved from Goal 17 to Goal 20. So I know that some of the references to different goals and plans are different goals within the plans that you've heard. Used to be within 17, now they're within 20. But I want to talk a little bit about the objective 20.2. This is the transportation objective, and you've heard a little bit about this, but it says basically that for the purposes of this objective, improvements related to bicycle, pedestrian, and equestrian facilities or safety improvements, including but not limited to intersection and turn lane additions or improvements, will not be deemed an expansion of the roadway. And the reason why this was added, or at least I presume, is that you've heard there is a provision within the Buckingham Community Plan that requires that certain roads out there, Orange River and Buckingham, cannot be 4-laned. They cannot be expanded. All right, this goal or objective, was added basically to make it clear that we can't 4-lane Orange River Boulevard, but it does not prevent us from adding intersection improvements or turn lane additions in order to basically help with safety. Also in 2010, policy 20.1.6 was added or changed in the Lee Plan. And we think that these policies are very specific and very important as it relates to this property because of the transitions and the fact that this is on the edge of the Rural Community Preserve because it is not part of the Rural Community Preserve. But policy 20.1.6 says that when possible, residential development adjacent to the Rural Community Preserve future land use category should make appropriate transitions to the community plan area with a graduated increase in density as development moves away from the Rural Community Preserve future land use category boundary. It also talks about appropriate buffers that need to be established. As you've heard from our presentation today, and as you'll see if you look at the staff, or both the staff report and the hearing examiner's recommendation, the design, the master concept plan in this case, and the changes that were made from the 2005 zoning, in large part are specifically designed to comply with this policy in order to ensure adequate transitions, adequate buffers as this property, as it moves away from the Rural Community Preserve, which is what it's doing. This property is not in the Rural Community Preserve. It is adjacent to. And so the master concept plan is designed to and has features that specifically keep this policy 20.1.6 in mind and try to make and ensure compliance with that. And the hearing examiner did find that we were in compliance with all the required policies. And I apologize for jumping around. We had several different presentations, and so I want to make sure that I just finish up and go through a few last comments. We also heard, and I'm familiar with the fact that there are other areas within Lee County that have different standard density ranges. They also have, like in the density reduction groundwater, for example, there is the Environmental Enhancement Communities Preserve overlay, which allows for additional density if you do certain environmental enhancements. In this case, we're not asking to get above the standard density in the future land use category that we're in, all right? We are within the standard density of 2, and we're doing or proposing, pursuant to the master concept plan and the application, to do the environmental enhancements anyway that you've heard about, rehydrating the wetland, moving the conveyance in order to rehydrate the wetland, creating additional buffers, additional setbacks, things that will improve water quality. And we're trying to do that, and we're still staying within the standard density of 2 units per acre here, instead of trying to get additional or bonus density of some kind using some overlay. As I mentioned, this property is not in the Rural Community Preserve. It's not expected to be developed like properties in the Rural Community Preserve. It's that simple. It's never been in that. There is one small area, one little tiny piece that is in the Rural Community Preserve, but it follows all of the requirements of the Lee Plan regarding that, and there are no buildings within 100 feet of the boundary. Improvements to the conveyance, in this case, will result in additional capacity with greater access for maintenance and a developer and HOA-funded maintenance account, which will get it off the county's dime. Changes to the conveyance and the buffers ensure compatibility and appropriate transitions. I know we've talked a little bit about traffic. We've heard some individuals talk about traffic. The hearing examiner's recommendation specifically finds that the traffic changes are de minimis in this case, and I don't think we need to talk about that a whole lot more. The project is consistent with the Lee County Comprehensive Plan, and the bottom line is that the hearing examiner found that it was consistent with different portions of the Lee County Comprehensive Plan. As noted, the hearing examiner's report recommends approval. We would ask that the board follow the hearing examiner's recommendation and approve the project, as we believe it is consistent with the Lee County Comprehensive Plan and the Lee County Land Development Code as required. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. I have the rest of our consultants here if you have any questions for them as well.
Okay, commissioners, what questions do you have, if any?
I yield the district commissioner first. I mean, who wants to go first?
I have some questions to the staff. First, I have, I guess, Chairman, if I may have my 3 minutes.
Yeah. And real quickly, just so that we go through the process, this is our time to ask questions of the applicant. If we have no questions for him, we can dismiss them.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, nobody else has any questions for?
I have questions for the applicant. So.
Just for the applicant? Okay, great, go ahead.
Okay, Richard, thank you. Great presentation today. So I had a couple of questions. Thank you for the update based upon why it's not part of the community plan. And I was aware of that, but my whole question was the staff originally, is it surrounded by that? And that's the whole question overall why that happened. But as far as like entrances to this, I know that's done through the development stage. What entrances, how many entrances are they looking at planning? And would they be lined up with the River Grove Estates entrance across the street? Or would it be offset from that? Or what were they looking at as far as entrances to the community?
So there are 2 entrances. There's one on Staley Road and there's one on Orange River. And if I misspeak, Ms. Sapin can come up and correct me. But the current entrance is aligned. The entrance that we're proposing on Orange River as part of this zoning is in the same place as the existing zoning. And so that's not being changed from what the existing, and yes, it is, I believe, relatively close to the entrance to River Grove Estates on the other side of Orange River Boulevard.
And they're looking at having a gate, a man gate or electronic gate? Based upon
Let me ask Ms. Sapin to come up and answer these questions.
And the question is because as we see communities being built, a lot of these communities, if they do that, they have to offset because they have to have stacking areas for cars. The gate's backed up. And what were you looking at for improvements along the 2 entrances on Orange River and also on Staley?
Okay. Jen, can you address that? Thank you.
For the record, Jennifer Sapin. Yes, the access points, as Richard said, they are the same as what was previously approved, and yes, they do align, as the Land Development Code requires, that you align with intersections or keep the minimum separations that it's required. As far as the entrance gates, we don't have a commitment in there that it would be gated. The developers that we have spoken to, that is their intention right now. We have it on there as an optional gate. The Land Development Code does have requirements for stacking in front of the gate, and that vehicles be able to turn around in wayward vehicle situations. As far as turn lanes, that would be evaluated during development order stages, and again, we would follow whatever is required of the Land Development Code.
Why that's by the gate? A lot of the communities, you have 800 rooftops or 1,000 that's monetarily beneficial to have a gate and have that fee spread out through the community, but with only either 160 or 258 units, that could be expensive for a HOA if you have a 24-hour man gate, or if it's, electric gates, there's a lot of maintenance, especially with 2 entrances, and that's why I was asking, what were you looking at? So is it going to be open, or would it be man gate, and that would be an issue of stacking vehicles there? That was one of the questions. And my other next question would be to staff, I guess. Maybe Dave would know or Anthony would know, who would know about I understand this is not part of the Buckingham Preserve area for the community plan. I know made changes taken it from the goals from 1720, but overall, that whole area is, when you look at that map, and somebody can pull up the original map that shows that, the black and white dotted line, who had that? Was that part of the presentation? Was that yours, Richard? Your original, that showed the whole area of Buckingham and it showed that presentation?
Yes, I believe we can get that up.
I know that's a part, it's already a done deal. It's unfortunate looking back, and I remember when this all occurred back in the 90s, the original zoning of this property, that was obviously a very contentious area back in the 90s and of course 2005. But that whole area, when you look at that whole area, and to say, I know it's right in the middle, but it's not included, and I know legally, from a legal standpoint, it's not included, but from a planning standpoint, that's just not part of it. And that's kind of what happened with the county. We've seen the side effects that's happening off of Palomino, off of Daniels, when the city was allowed to come in 20 years ago and develop Paseo and Flexion Isles and develop high-density units in a rural character area. They were allowed to come across the 6 Mile Cypress Slough, and they put in 2 units per acre or more in a rural area, and that's what we have the issues we have now with the compatibility with the traffic and utilities and everything else, and that's what I'm looking at now, how, many mistakes in the past, and this is part of those mistakes, allowing that to happen, and that kind of fell through the cracks, I think, personally, over the last 20 years, and allowed that to stay out of that preserve, and now, here we are now, 20 years later, and dealing with it now. So, and my question is back to the applicant, after hearing some of the comments today, and are they willing to make adjustments for their ask of the 258 units? Or are you guys standing firm with the amount of increase of units you're looking for, the increased density? Because right now I cannot support that 258. My person, there's 4 of us up here, but I'm not going to support that request. So is there any appetite from the applicant to reduce that?
I think the answer is, I'd like to probably talk to my client about that briefly, if I could, in order to answer that question.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Briefly, well, I had some questions for the applicant too. Anybody else have any questions of staff or applicant at this time?
I have for staff.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Greenwell, go ahead.
I think now might be a great time, Michael, if you could explain, county attorney could explain to the crowd kind of the situation we're in with the fact that they're meeting all the criteria, at least explain the commissioner's position that we're in. I think that would be a great time to be able to do that.
That position may be changing as we're talking here.
Hopefully.
The circumstances, as Commissioner Hammond correctly indicated, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. The Board of County Commissioners does not and is not allowed by law to count T-shirts and make decisions that are arbitrary and capricious. You have rules and regulations that were adopted by the county, the Lee Plan, Land Development Code, administrative codes, those things must be followed. In a quasi-judicial proceeding, you are bound to act based on competent substantial evidence. That evidence is provided in the record below, and that is provided to you today. If the board finds that the applicant meets the requirements of the Land Development Code, or there is no evidence on the record to deny no competent substantial evidence on the record to deny the request, then the board must approve it. If you do not, there's a couple scenarios that could happen. One would be a writ of cert case that was provided to the courts, where the court will decide whether or not the request met the code, and then ultimately whether or not your decision met the requirements of law. If that were to happen, I think it was indicated earlier, we can end up back in the same spot with the applicant getting direction from the court to approve their request. If the board denies the request based on competent substantial evidence, we would request as part of the motion you provide what that might be from the record, and then ultimately we will draft a resolution to support that. At this point, though, I think Richard wants to answer that one question from Commissioner Pendergrass, and then if based on that, I can also provide additional guidance on where to go from here.
Very good. Commissioner Greenwell,
Could I make a statement before they address it?
Sure, excellent, yep.
I think every developer or anyone coming into a community should always consider the community. And I think this is a great opportunity for that developer to want to be welcomed into that community. So hopefully that's the decision they make. I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, Mr. Aiken.
Thank you, Chairman. After speaking to my client, no, we don't wish to revisit the plan at this time.
I have a question for the county attorney then.
Commissioner Pendergrass, you're recognized.
Michael, I've done the case, we've had these before, we have competent substantial evidence. So if we have competent substantial evidence, we can include that in the motion based upon, I know we can't include traffic, but we can include noise pollution, which is caused by traffic. That's been substantially held up in court. And also, fair market values, you can use the homes on River Grove Lane as a decrease in value due to the permit changes within the compatibility of the area. So would that be competent substantial evidence to deny, to make a notion based upon denial, that even though it meets land development code, those other criteria does also meet that too? Not traffic, the count, not concurrency, but noise pollution, which has been held up in court.
The Board of County Commissioners in this proceeding, while you have recommendations of approval, you can disagree with those recommendations as part of your decision. If you were to find, for example, your typical compatibility arguments and inconsistency come from your LEAP Plan 5.1.5, which provides for the protection of residential areas from encroachment of additional outside uses. What you would end up having to do is, as part of the board, provide what evidence that you've heard today or that you've read in the record that either you disagree with the hearing examiner's decision or that you find is needed to be addressed. For example, I've heard a number of discussions so far today about the size of the lots. If the lot sizes are not consistent with the rural character and you find that that is detrimental to the rural character, you might find that the proposed development is not consistent with 5.1.5.
Like the 5-foot setback on the sides.
Correct. If you wanted additional setbacks or things. Now, one of the things I would caution the board on is 5.1.5 doesn't just stop there. It provides that if conditions are not adequate to address the compatibility issues, then the board can deny the request. Under the circumstances, it may be that there might be conditions that could be tied to this to make it more compatible. It does not, based on, I'm just going to take one of the issues, lot sizes. It indicates that you need those lot sizes based on the site plan. Well, I don't know what the lot sizes are along those areas of the outside tracks, but if that's a concern, then that's something that is part of the record that the board can identify as an issue with the compatibility of the neighbors. But as of this point, I think the size of the lots are like 6,500 square feet, which would not be the 1 acre size lots that are in the surrounding areas or bigger. That's just one example. There's probably more, but as far as transportation goes, you're correct. We cannot deny it for concurrency reasons. The evidence, I don't know if there's evidence in the record to support the finding that the noise from the traffic was raised as an issue on the record, but again, we have staff and members of the
that would come back under character and compatibility with the current surroundings, and this would be a permanent change due to the increase. And that's what I was basing that upon. And also the setbacks was a 5-foot minimum setback, which is part of the record. Minimum 50-foot lot with a 5-foot setback. And that's why I was asking about the decrease in units, then that would increase that setback on the sides, and also they got 20 foot from the street. Their trucks won't fit in the driveway, but at least from house to house, the 5-foot setback was an issue.
Right, and I forgot to add, if the board finds that approving the project with additional conditions would address those concerns that you have as far as compatibility, we could also discuss proposal of those. But I would suggest that if there are additional conditions that you'd want to impose based on lot size and some of those setback issues, that we remand this to the hearing examiner's office to address those issues, to make sure that if there are conditions of approval to address lot sizes and setbacks, that they be fully vetted and then brought back to you, rather than, as we've seen in some circumstances, where they just happen on the fly. I would not recommend doing that today.
At this point, since we moved into our deliberation on the case, I'd like to go ahead and dismiss Mr. Aiken then, unless anybody has any further questions for him. Okay, thank you, sir, for your presentation today. All right, so we're on board discussion and consideration of the item here. At this time, does anybody else have anything they'd want to add?
I would like to consider sending it back to this hearing examiner to re-examine the setbacks. I'd like to make that motion.
So there's a motion for remand from Commissioner Greenwell, specifically looking at the setbacks and the lot sizes, is that correct?
Setbacks, yeah.
Oh, setbacks for sure.
I'll second that.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass as well. All right, so we've moved on to discussion. Does anybody wish to discuss the motion at this time? Commissioner Sandelli?
I'd like to make a comment, this is not the first time that we have addressed density and the challenges of growth. And so this is not new, for us. I will say that when we talk about looking at density and so on and so forth, and some of the things that we have done, density and some of the improvements actually work, in a lot of different ways, not just for density, but also for the environment and so on and so forth. It's interesting that I think at the end of the day, we're looking for some compatibility in a lot of different ways. I think it's very clear for what was approved before in the 160 units that there's an acceptance for that, and for a couple different reasons, that it retains the character of the community, and then the other thing is that when how do you retain that and maintain the community and the standards that are there? So I would agree. I would send it back to be looked at again. I think there's some changes that can be made that bring what's on the table now and what's being proposed together, as been stated before.
At this time, I had a few comments too I wanted to make, and maybe the motion maker's interested in adding them to his motion as well. But I want to preface what I say by I have full faith and confidence in the hearing examiners that we have. They're fantastic. I think they reviewed the case excellently. Did you have a comment you wanted to make too? Okay, let me make my comment and then I'll grab you so that you can give us your thoughts on it. But one line in the hearing examiner's recommendation that I disagree with is the line that says, given the surrounding development patterns, a residential subdivision is appropriate at this location. And the footnote is citing a couple of LDCs, 34-145D and 4, but it also cites Lee Plan Policy 5.1.5. My understanding of 5.1.5, applying that and then looking at this, I would say that the surrounding development patterns do not actually lend to this being an appropriate change. The surrounding development, it looks like it's completely surrounded by the rural preserve. And so to go from rural preserve to, 50-foot wide lots does not seem to be compatible in my understanding of compatible. And so, that would be the finding that I would like to send back for remand to look at that, policy 5.1.5, the application of whether going to these 50-foot wide lots that really do not resemble the surrounding, and I mean surrounding because it is fully surrounded on all sides by Buckingham Preserve nature of the community there. So if you wanted to add that into your motion for remand.
Chairman, I will add that to my motion.
Excellent.
I'll second that addition to that.
So we have the motion properly amended. And then to the hearing examiner, you wish to make a comment? And feel free to come to the podium if you'd like to as well, since that microphone's working.
Okay, I just asked for clarification. If it's getting remanded to me, I understood that the reason for the remand was to re-examine the setbacks. But the perimeter setbacks are 170 feet, 150 feet, 200 feet, and 170 feet. If the question is about the rear lot setback of being 5 feet, that's from preserve areas and from open space areas.
So what I seek is further direction on setbacks. If they increase setbacks to 300 feet, really, it sounds like the issue is lot size. And if that's the issue, it would be more helpful to me if you remand it for that reason, lot size or dimensions, because I'm going to be restricted in my review on remand to only the things you mention. And if you only mention setbacks, then basically I'm looking at increasing the perimeter setbacks that are all over 150 feet, as I've described to you, or the rear line, lot line setbacks, which are 5 feet, but it's 5 feet from open space areas and preserves. So if you understand my request.
So if I understand the request is for the motion to specifically identify if it's lot sizes and dimensions that we wish to have you look at. And also, the other thing that I'd like to have you review is, again, related to policy 5.1.5 and the application of that and the decision here. Because again, I full faith and confidence in you, but just disagree with that finding in conclusion on policy 5.1.5. So is that something that can be reviewed on remand?
If those are your instructions, yes.
Okay. So would the motion maker amend his motion to remand to the hearing examiner based on a review of the lot sizes and dimensions of the lots, and also a review of the application of policy 5.1.5 for compatibility?
Yes, I'd like to change my motion to exactly that.
Okay, so Commissioner Greenwell has amended his motion. Does the seconder wish to amend his second?
I will second with clarification that my motion for the second was for under B, site development regulations, single-family lot size, 6,500 square foot minimum lot width, but minimum setback from the street was 20, but the side was 5 foot. It's not to preserve, it's not to the buffer, that's 5 foot from development side. So it's a site development regulations of 5 foot, this is 5 foot. And so you would have a 10 foot between each pad or which roof line of each house. That's what my intention was for the second for his motion was the setbacks for the structural site development under B, under 2B on page, what page is this?
Okay. And I believe that does fall under the dimensions and lot sizes, but specifically the motion maker would like to add that into his motion as well then?
Yes.
Okay, so very good. So we've got the lot sizes and dimensions, that site development regulations 2B that Commissioner Pendergrass specifically referenced, and reviewing the application of policy 5.1.5 for compatibility. It's been motioned by Commissioner Greenwell. The seconder agrees and seconds. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, I see no further discussion. Are there any objections? No objections, then that motion carries unanimously. Very good. Do you need any further clarification or ready to go? Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, at this time, we have two comprehensive plan amendments. I'm going to go ahead and give the folks 5 minutes who don't want to stick around for the other cases to leave the room, but yeah. Two cases out of order. I'd like to take the economic element transmittal case first, and then we'll finish with the Greenwell SR31 case. So let's go with the economic element update first.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time today.
I'll try to be as quick as I can because we've been here for quite a while now.
Ma'am?
All right, the case before you right now is CPA 2022-00001, which is a county-initiated text amendment to update the economic element of the LEED plan, as well as update some of the future land use categories to align with economic trends. On February 1st, 2022, the board directed staff to update the economic plan, align allowable uses in certain land use categories with current and anticipated trends, and identify and make any non-substantive changes to the LEED plan that are required for internal consistency. The amendments that are proposed were made in collaboration with the Economic Development Office and have been reviewed by the Horizon Council. Changes to the economic element. First off, I'll say the economic element is an optional element. It was last updated in our plan in 2010. So the changes we are making, proposed goal 158 is to establish a positive business climate by promoting industrial uses in appropriate locations and providing for infrastructure required for future development. Goal 159 will support and attract businesses by promoting the creation of incentives for business development, business-friendly regulations in the LDC, and organizations that improve the capabilities of local businesses. Goal 160 attracts and retains a skilled workforce by supporting the infrastructure, services, and quality of life enhancement for employees, as well as working with educational institutions within the county and employers to align curricula with the skills needed in the local job market. Goal 161 continues to center tourism as a pillar of the county's economy by targeting leisure, sports, and business tourism as primary markets for Lee County. The county will continue to utilize the tourist development tax to maintain and revitalize our beaches, direct marketing efforts to take advantage of new forms of tourism, and provide architectural standards around primary points of entry for visitors. Some changes to future land use categories involving employment centers, the trade port, and the industrial development future land use categories found in policies 1.1.13 and 1.1.7 respectively are updated to add allowable uses, and wording regarding the treatment of caretakers' residences in the industrial development, trade port, and commercial future land use categories are updated to provide consistency across them. Language is added to encourage the protection of lands identified for industrial uses. Lands in these future land use categories that allow for industrial uses are recognized as vital to economic health and employment opportunities for the county's workforce. Non-substantive changes, this is from the last slide, sorry about that, moved too quick. Non-substantive changes were made to policies in goals 6 and 7, as well as a portion of chapter 13 to remove inconsistent, redundant, or incorrect language in an effort to improve the clarity of the LEED plan. The proposed amendments to the LEED plan will update the economic element, align allowable uses in the commercial, trade port, and industrial development future land use categories with future trends, and correct inconsistent and unnecessary language within the LEED plan. The proposed amendments are internally consistent with the LEED plan. Staff and the LPA both recommend transmittal of the amendments as proposed in attachment 1, and staff are available for any questions.
Excellent. Any questions, commissioners, at this time? No? Has anyone come to speak in public comment on the economic element update comprehensive plan amendment? Okay, I see none. I'll close public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to make a motion? Motion for approval from Commissioner Greenwell. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any discussion on that? Do you have any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. All right, at this time, we will take up the Greenwell SR31. Commissioner Greenwell, do you wish to make an announcement?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I am abstaining from voting on CPA 2021-00015 due to the conflict of interest. My family and I own the subject property. I will file the Form 8B with the minutes officer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will abstain from.
All right, so he's going to file that form. Go ahead and present the case then.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brandon Dunn with the Lee County Planning Section. This should be fairly quick. This is an adoption hearing, so you've already reviewed this once. As you recall, the request that originally came in included 76.82 acres. Upon review of staff in the LPA, staff actually recommended expanding this to include approximately around 180 acres total of uplands and wetlands. It includes the original subject property as well as the property to the north and some additional properties to the south. So there are 15 properties in total. We analyzed these impacts and found minimal impacts by any of the adjacent properties. As you may recall, this area was allowed to have increased commercial already, so that's why there wasn't a lot of additional impacts based on the expanded areas. As I mentioned, this was transmitted to the state reviewing agencies on September 21st of last year. It was reviewed by, we received a letter from 4 of the agencies. There were no objection. Staff continues to recommend adoption of the proposed amendments.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions at this time? Okay, seeing no questions, I'll go ahead and call for public comment. Has anyone come to speak in public comment on the comprehensive plan amendment? Okay, seeing no public comment, then I guess I will give the applicant any opportunity to present if you'd like.
Just real simple, Ken Galander for the record, on behalf of the applicant, in compliance and concurrence with staff's recommendation, and we seek your approval. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. All right, does somebody wish to make a motion?
Make the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Pendergrass moves approval. Commissioner Sandelli seconds it. Any further discussion? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Is there any further business before us? Seeing no further business, we're adjourned.